and I'm at the hour. So, hello again, one and all. Assuming that there is anyone there, of course, because I have no idea of saying. So, what's going on? So yeah, first things first. While I remember, I managed to find out why, or well, I didn't know why I didn't get an alert for it, but I did manage to find out who it was who followed me before last stream. So thank you there to Plague. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And I should probably shout out again Discipline, who I forgot to shout out the start of the stream after he followed me. So he might not have seen it. Presumably he watches these at all. So yeah, thanks to doing you. For those of you who are keeping track and are interested, this means that our Londonathon, which is coming up this Friday, the 1st of May, is currently standing at 5 stories long. Now this is of a potential 10 stories and 39 chapters of a novel. So yeah, it's not nothing, but it could be a lot more. And yeah, I would love for it to be more, but if it's not, it's not. Such is life. Anyway, what are we doing today? So as always, should introduce myself. My name is SkitterSkreetch, you can call me Skitter. And I am a little rat, as you can see, and I'm trapped inside this library, which is only a small section of a much larger library in which I'm in a more general sense trapped. But yeah, today I'm going to be reading for you some of the work of F. Scott Fitzgerald, which are down here. We got 3 new ones, namely Basil the Freshest Boy, Crazy Sunday, and 3 Hours Between Flights. I was planning to get more than these. I had 2 of them yesterday before we had to end early because I had stuff coming up. And I wanted to get more today, but I was only able to find the 1, unfortunately. But yeah, I just have been running all around the place doing stuff on the wards, which, by the way, I didn't realise, but after the last change to the ward, or one of them, you can now see some of the wards down at the bottom there, which is neat. Oh yeah. I don't know really what's going on with it, but yeah, that's I think that's cool. Yeah, so yeah, we also, like I said yesterday, we were doing the twains. I feel like I need to say some stuff, but really there's nothing to say much other than, yeah, we're going to get started on these twains, run through them in the order there. We got them, and then, yeah, I mean, as always, for anyone who's watching, feel free to ask me if you need me to repeat anything or go over something again. I'll be stopping at various points. A lot of these twains have like chapters sort of built in them, so if they do that, it'll probably be after every chapter. If not, it will just be when you take a drink, and we'll do a little bit of commentary. And again, if anyone has any thoughts, any ideas, anything like that, they should feel free to chip in. Love to chat about it. But yeah, other than that, I think we're just going to get on with it. So yeah, what we got to read today then? Yeah, Basil the Freshest Boy, which is an odd name. Yeah, yeah, this one looks like it's got chapters built in there. 1. It was in Broadway restaurant in the dead of night, and a brilliant and mysterious group of society people, diplomats and members of the underworld were there. A few minutes ago, the sparkling wine had been flowing, and a girl had been dancing gaily upon a table. But now the whole crowd were hushed and breathless. All eyes was fixed upon the masked but well-groomed man in the dress suit and the opera hat, who stood nonchalantly in the door. Don't move, please," he said in a well-bred, cultivated voice that had nevertheless a ring of steel in it. "This thing in my hand might go off." His glance roved from table to table, fell upon the malignant man higher up with his pale saturnine face, upon Etherly, a suave secret agent from a foreign power, and rested a little longer, a little more softly perhaps, upon the table where the girl with dark hair and dark tragic eyes sat alone. "Now that my purpose is accomplished, it might interest you to know who I am." There was a gleam of expectation in every eye. The breast of the dark-eyed girl heaved faintly, and a tiny burst of subtle French perfume rose in the air. "I am none other than that elusive gentleman, Basil Lee, better known as the Shadow." Taking off his well-fitting opera hat, he bowed ironically from the waist, then, like a flash, he turned and were gone into the night. "You get up to New York only once a month," Lewis Crumb was saying, "and then you have to take a master along." Slowly, Basil Lee's glazed eyes turned from the barns and billboards, the Indiana countryside, the interior of the Broadway Limited. The hypothesis of the swift telegraph poles faded, and Lewis Crumb's stolid face took shape against the white slip cover of the opposite bench. "I just ducked the master when I got to New York," said Basil. Yeah, you would. I bet I would. You try and you'll see. What do you mean saying I'll see all the time, Lewis? What I'll see? What'll I see? You have very bright dark blue eyes. No, he has very bright dark blue eyes were at this moment fixed upon his companion with boredom and impatience. The two had nothing in common except their age, which were 15, and the lifelong friendships of their fathers, which is left as nothing. Also, they were bound from the same Middle Western city for Basil's first and Lewis's second year at the same Eastern school. But contrary to all the best traditions, Lewis the veteran were miserable and Basil the neophyte were happy. Lewis hated school. He had grown entirely dependent on the stimulus of an auntie vital mother, and as he felt her slipping farther and farther away from him, he plunged deeper into misery and homesickness. Basil, on the other hand, had lived with such intensity on so many stories of boarding school life that far from being homesick, he had a glad feeling of recognition and familiarity. Indeed, it was with some sense of doing the appropriate thing, having the traditional roughhouse, that he had thrown Lewis's comb off the train at Milwaukee last night for no reason at all. To Lewis, Basil's ignorant enthusiasm was distasteful. His instinctive attempt to dampen it had contributed to the mutual irritation. "I'll tell you what they'll say," he said ominously. "They'll catch you smoking and put you on balance." "No, they won't, because I won't be smoking. I'll be training for football." "Football? Yeah, football. Honestly, Lewis, you don't like anything, do you?" "I don't like football. I don't want to go out and get a crack in the eye," Lewis spoke aggressively, for his mother canonised all his timidness as common sense. Basil's answer, made with what he considered kindly intent, was the sort of remark that creates lifelong enemies. "You're probably a lot more popular in school if you play football," he suggested patronisingly. Lewis did not consider himself unpopular. He did not think of it in that way after all. "Oh, you were astounded." "You wait," he cried furiously. "I'd take all that freshness out of you." "Clam yourself," said Basil, coolly plucking at the creases of his long trousers. "Just clam yourself." "I guess everybody knows you were the freshest boy at country day." "Clam yourself," repeated Basil, with less assurance. "Kindly clam yourself." "I guess I know what they had in the school paper about you." Basil's own coolness was no longer perceptible. "If you don't clam yourself," he said darkly, "I'm going to throw your brushes off the train too." The enormity of this threat were effective. Lewis sank back in his seat, snorting and muttering, but undoubtedly calmer. His reference had been to one of the most shameful passages in his companion's life. In a periodical issued by the boys at Basil's late school, there had appeared under the heading "Personals." If someone will please poison young Basil or find some other means to stop his mouth, the school at large and myself will be much obliged. The two boys sat there fuming wordlessly at each other. Then, resolutely, Basil tried to reinter this unfortunate souvenir of the past. All that were behind him now. Perhaps he had been a little fresh, but he was making a new start. After a moment, the memory passed with it, and with it the train and Lewis's dismal presence. The breath of the East came sweeping over him again, with a vast nostalgia. A voice called him out of that fabled world. A man stood behind him with an hand on his sweater-clad shoulder. "Lee!" "Yes, sir." "All depends on you now, understand?" "Yes, sir." "All right," the coach said. "Go in and win." Basil tore his sweater from his stripling form and dashed out on the field. There were 2 minutes to play and the score was 3-0 for the enemy, but at the sight of young Lee, kept out of the game all year by a malicious plan of Dan Askins, the school bully, and Weasel Williams' toady, a thrill of hope went over the St. Regis stand. 33-12, 16-22, barked Midget Brown, the diminutive little quarterback. It was a signal. "Oh gosh," Basil spoke aloud, forgetting the last unpleasantness. "I wish we'd get there before tomorrow." And that's the end of chapter 1. Bit odd. I'm not sure if that first scene in the sort of, I think, speakeasy were a daydream or a flash towards the future. Really not clear. But yeah, we'll push on. What else? I mean, obviously 2 boys who don't like each other very much, but then we also have the weird crash. I guess the nostalgia is a flashback, so maybe it is like that. I'm not sure, this is a bit odd form-wise. I think we just press on, really. Chapter 2. St. Regis School, East Chester, November 18th, 19... Dear Mother, there is not much to say, but I thought I would write you about my allowance. All the boys here have a bigger allowance than me because there are a lot of little things I have to get, such as shoelaces, etc. School is still very nice and I am having a fine time, but football is over and there is not much to do. I'm going to New York this week to see a show. I do not know yet what it will be, but probably the Quacker Girl or Little Boy Blue, as they are both very good. Dr. Bacon is very nice and there's a good physician in the village. No more now as I have to study algebra. Your affectionate son, Basil D. Lee. As he put the letter in its envelope, a wizened little boy came into the deserted study hall where he sat and stood staring at him. "Hello," said Basil, frowning. I've been looking for you, said the little boy, slowly and judiciously. I looked all over, out in your room and out in the gym, and they said you probably might have sneaked off in here. What do you want? Basil demanded. Oh, you're Ulysses Bossy. Basil jumped to his feet. The little boy retreated a step. Go on, hit me, he shouted nervously. Go on, hit me, because I'm just half your size, Bossy. Basil winced. You call me that again and I'll spank you. No, you won't spank me. Brick Whale said you ever touched any of us. But I never did touch any of you. Didn't you chase a lot of us one day and did Brick Whale? And what do you want? Cried Basil in desperation. Dr. Bacon wants you. They sent me after you and somebody said maybe you sneaked in here. Basil dropped his letter in his pocket and walked out. The little boy and his invective followed him through the door. He traversed a long corridor, muggy with that odour best described as the smell of stale caramels that is so peculiar to boys' schools, ascended a stair and knocked at an unexceptional but formidable door. Dr. Bacon were at his desk. He was an handsome, red-headed Episcopal clergyman of 50, whose original real interest in boys were now tempered by the flustered cynicism which is the fate of all headmasters, and settles on them like green mould. There were certain preliminaries before Basil were asked to sit down. Gold-rimmed glasses had to be hoisted up from nowhere by a black cord and fixed on Basil to be sure he would not impostor. A great mass of paper on the desk that he shuffled through, not in search of anything, but as a man nervously shuffles a pack of cards. I had a letter from your mother this morning, Basil. The use of his first name accompanied startled Basil. No one else in school had yet called him anything but Bossy or Lee. She feels that your marks have been poor. I believe you've been sent here as a certain amount of sacrifice, and she expects. Basil's spirit withered with shame, not his poor marks, but his financial inadequacy should be so bluntly stated. He knew that you were one of the poorest boys in a rich boys' school. Perhaps some dormant sensibility in Dr. Bacon became aware of his discomfort. He shuffled through the papers once more and began on a new note. However, that was not what I sent for you about this afternoon. You applied last week for permission to go to New York on Saturday to a matinee. Mr. Davis tells me that for almost the first time since school opens you will be off bands tomorrow. Yes, sir. It's not a good record. However, I would allow you to go to New York if it could be arranged. Unfortunately, no masters are available this Saturday. Basil's mouth dropped a jar. What? Dr. Bacon, I know two parties that are going. Couldn't I go with one of them? Dr. Bacon ran through all his papers very quickly. Unfortunately, one is composed of slightly older boys, and the other group made arrangements some week ago. How about the party that's going to the Quaker Girl with Mr. Dunn? It's that party I speak of. They feel the arrangements are complete and they have purchased seats together. Suddenly Basil understood. At the look in his eyes, Dr. Bacon went on hurriedly. It's perhaps one thing I can do. Of course, there must be several boys in the party, so that the expense of the master can be divided up among all. If you can find two other boys who would like to make up a party and let me have their names by 5 o'clock, I'll send Mr. Rooney with you. Thank you, Basil said. Dr. Bacon hesitated. Beneath the cynical incrustations of many years of instinct stirred the look in the unusual case of this boy, and found out what made him the most detested boy in the school. Among boys and masters there seemed to exist an extraordinary hostility towards him, and though Dr. Bacon had dealt with many sorts of schoolboy crimes, he had neither by himself nor with the aid of trusted sixth formers been able to lay his hands on its underlying cause. There were probably no single thing, but a combination of things, and most probably one of those intangible questions of personality. He remembered that when he first saw Basil, he had considered him unusually prepossessing. Besides, sometimes these things work themselves out. You won't want to rush in clumsily. Let's have a better report to send home next month, Basil. Yes, sir. Basil ran quickly downstairs to the recreation room. It was Wednesday, and most of the boys had already gone into the village of Eastchester, where Basil, who was still on the bound, was forbidden to follow. When he looked at those still scattered about the pool table and piano, he saw it was going to be difficult to get anyone to go with him at all, but Basil was quite conscious he was most unpopular at school. He had begun almost immediately. One day, less than a fortnight after he come, a crowd of the smaller boys, perhaps urged onto it, gathered suddenly around him and began calling him Bossy. And the next week he had 2 fights, and both times the crowd were vehemently and eloquently with the other boy. Soon after, when he were merely shovelling indiscriminately, like everyone else, to get into the dining room, Carver, the captain of the football team, turned about and seized him by the back of the neck, held him and dressed him down savagely. He joined a group innocently at the piano and were told, "Go on away, we don't want you around." After a month, he began to realise the full extent of his unpopularity. It shocked him. One day, after a particularly bitter humiliation, he went up to his room and cried. He tried to keep out of the way for a while, but it didn't help. He were accused of sneaking off here and there, as he was bent on a series of nefarious errands. Puzzled and wretched, he looked at his face in the glass, trying to discover there the secret of their dislike. In the expression of his eyes, his smile. He saw now that in certain ways he had erred at the outset. He had boasted that he had been considered yellow at football. He had pointed out people's mistakes to them. He had showed off his rather extraordinary fund of general information in class. He had tried to do better and couldn't understand his failure to atone. Must be too late. He was queer forever. He had indeed become the scapegoat, the immediate villain, the sponge which absorbed all malice and irritability abroad. Just as the most frightened person in a party seems to preserve all the others' fear, seems to be afraid for them. His situation was not helped by the fact that, oblivious to all, that supreme self-confidence with which he had come to St. Regis in September was thoroughly broken. Boys taunted him with impunity, who would not have dared raise their voice to him several months before. This trip to New York had come to mean everything to him. Surcease from the misery of his daily life, as well as a glimpse into the long-waited heaven of romance. His postponement for a week after week due to his sins, he was constantly caught reading After Light, for example, driven by his wretchedness into such vicarious escapes from reality, had deepened his longing until it would burn in hunger. It were unbearable that he should not go, and he told over the short list of those who might get to accompany him. The possibilities were Fat Gaspar, Treadway, and Bugs Brown. A quick journey to their rooms showed that they had all availed themselves of the Wednesday permission to go in Eastchester for the afternoon. Basil did not hesitate. He had until 5 o'clock, and his only chance was to go after them. But not the first time he had broken bounds. The last attempt had ended in disaster, an extension of his confinement. In his room he put on an heavy sweater, an overcoat, was a betrayal of intent, replaced his jacket over it, and hid a cap in his back pocket. Then he went downstairs, and with an elaborate careless whistle, struck out across the lawn for the gymnasium. Whilst there he stood for a while as if looking in the windows, first the one close to the wall, then near the corners of the building. From here he moved quickly, but not too quickly, into a grove of lilacs. Then he dashed round the corner, down a long stretch of lawn that was blind from all windows, and, parting the stands of a wire fence, crawled through and stood up upon the grounds of a neighbouring estate. For the moment he was free. He put on his cap against the chilly November wind, and set out along the half-mile road to town. Eastchester were a suburban farming community, with a small shoe factory. The institutions which pounded to the factory workers were the ones patronised by the boys: a movie house, a quick lunch wagon on wheels known as the Dog, and the Bostonian Candy Kitchen. Basil tried the dog first and happened immediately upon a prospect. This was Bugs Brown, an hysterical boy subject to fits and strenuously avoided. Years later he became a brilliant lawyer, and at that time he was considered by the boys of St. Regis to be a typical lunatic, due to the peculiar series of sounds with which he assuaged his nervousness all day long. He consorted with boys younger than himself, who were without the prejudices of their elders, and were in the company of several when Basil came in. "Whee!" he cried. "Ee!" He put his hands over his mouth and danced it quickly, making a wah-wah-wah-wah sound. "It's Bossy Lee! It's Bossy Lee! It's Bossy Lee!" "Wait a minute, Bugs," said Basil anxiously, half afraid that Bugs would go fine and crazy, for he persuaded him to come down. "So, Bugs, listen. Bugs, wait a minute. Can you come up to New York Saturday afternoon?" "Whee!" cried Bugs to Basil's distress. "Whee!" "Honestly, Bugs, tell me, can you? We could go up together if you could." "I've got to see a doctor," said Bugs suddenly calmly. "He wants to see how crazy I am." "Can't you have him see about some other day?" said Basil without humour. "Whee!" cried Bugs. "All right then," said Basil hastily. Have you seen Fat Gaspar in town?" Bugs were lost in a shrill noise, but somebody had seen Fat. Basil was directed to the Bostonian Candy Kitchen. This were a gaudy paradise of cheap sugar. Its odour, heavy and sickly and calculated to bring out sticky sweet sweat on an adult's palms, hung suffocatingly over the whole vicinity, and met one like a strong moral dissuasion at the door. Inside, beneath a pattern of flowers, material as black as point lace, a line of boys sat eating heavy dinners of banana splits, maple nut, and chocolate marshmallow nut sundaes. Basil found Fat Gaspar at a table on the side. Fat Gaspar was at once Basil's most unlikely and most ambitious quest. He was considered a nice fellow. In fact, it was so pleasant he had been courteous to Basil and had spoken to him politely all full. Basil realised that he would like that to everyone. It was just possible that Fat liked him, as people used to in the past, and he was driven desperately to take a chance. It were undoubtedly presumption, and as he approached the table and saw the stiffened faces which the other two boys turned towards him, Basil's hope diminished. "Say, Fat," he asked and hesitated. Then he burst forth suddenly. "I'm on bounds, but I ran off because I had to see you. Dr. Bacon told me I could go to New York Saturday if I could get 2 other boys to go. I asked Bugs Brown and he couldn't, and I thought I'd ask you." He broke off, furiously embarrassed, and waited. Suddenly the 2 boys with Fat burst into a shout of laughter. Bugs wasn't crazy enough. Fat Gaspar hesitated. He couldn't go to New York Saturday, and ordinarily he would have refused without offending. He had nothing against Basil, nor indeed against anybody. The boys had only a certain resistance to public opinion, and he were influenced by the contemptuous laughter of the others. I don't want to go, he said indifferently. Why do you want to ask me? Then, half in shame, he gave a depreciative little laugh and bent over his ice cream. Just thought I'd ask you, said Basil. Turning quickly away, he went to the counter and in a hollow and unfamiliar voice ordered a strawberry sundae. He ate it mechanically, hearing occasional whispers and snickers from the table yarn. Still in the daze, he started to walk out without paying his cheque. The clerk called him back and he was conscious of more derisive laughter. For a moment he hesitated whether to go back to the table and hit one of the boys in the face, but he saw nothing to be gained. They would say the truth. He'd done it because he couldn't get anywhere to go to New York. Clenching his fist with impotent rage, he walked from the store. He came immediately upon his third prospect, Treadway. Treadway had entered St. Regis late in the year and had been put in a room with Basil the week before. The fact that Treadway hadn't witnessed his humiliations of the autumn encouraged Basil to behave naturally towards him, and the relation had been, if not intimate, at least tranquil. Hey, Treadway, he called, still excited from the affair in Bostonian. Can you come to New York to a show Saturday afternoon? He stopped, realising that Treadway were in the company of Brick Wales, a boy he had had a fight with and one of his bitterest enemies. Looking from one to the other, Basil saw a look of impatience in Treadway's face and a faraway expression in Brick Wales, and he realised what must have been happening. Treadway, making his way into the life of the school, had just been enlightened as to the status of his roommate. Like fact Gaspar, rather than acknowledge himself eligible to such an intimate request, he preferred to cut the friendly relation short. Not your life, he said briefly. So long. The two walked past him into the candy kitchen. Now these slights, so much the bitterer for their lack of passion been visited upon Basil in September, it would have been unbearable. But since then he had developed a shell of hardiness, which, while it did not add to his attractiveness, spared him certain delicacies of torture. In misery enough, in despair and self-pity, he went the other way along the street for a little distance until he could control the violent contortions of his face. Then, taking a roundabout route, he started back to school. He reached the adjoining estate, intending to go back the way he had come. Halfway through an edge, he heard footsteps approaching along the sidewalk and stood motionless, fearing the proximity of a master. Their voices grew nearer and louder. Before he knew it, he was listening with an horrified fascination. So after he tried Bugs Brown, the poor nut asked Fat Gaspar to go with him, and Fat said, "What do you ask me for?" Serves him right, he couldn't get anybody at all. With a dismal but triumphant voice of Lewis Crumb. That's the end of chapter 2. Have a little drink here. It is astounding the many small cruelties that children can do to one another. Perhaps especially young boys, although perhaps not. Still, it's a miserable time to be on the wrong side of it. A miserable time indeed. And the funny thing is, the way the writing is done, I can sort of understand it. Like, Basil does come across a little bit annoying in this. Not in any huge way, just a little bit, I don't know, aggravating. Well, obviously you can sympathise with him because you can see his perspective and the cruelty that's going on to him. But you can also see how it come to be a thing, come about really. Sad. It is sad. I'm not enjoying this as much as some of the Fitzgerald, but he's managing to do a decent balance in that regard, I would say. A curious thing indeed. Of course, part of it will also be because he's poorer than the rest of them. Sad the way things are stratified that way, but it is the case, and even when it's not so directly relevant, as in the case of boys who don't have their own money, finances and class still play a role, don't they? It is a bitter thing. Anyhow, no sense dwelling on it. Back to the picture. Chapter 3. Up in his room, Basil found a package lying on his bed. He knew its contents, and for a long time had been eagerly expecting it. But such was his depression that he opened it listlessly. It was a series of 8 colour reproductions of Harrison Fisher's girls on glossy paper, without printing or advertising matter and suitable for framing. The pictures were named Dora, Marguerite, Babette, Lucille, Gretchen, Rose, Catherine and Mina. 2 of them, Marguerite and Rose, Basil looked at, slowly tore up and dropped into a wastebasket, as one who disposes of the inferior parts from a litter. The other 6 he pinned at intervals around the room. Then he lay down in his bed and regarded them. Dora, Lucille, and Catherine were blonde. Gretchen were medium. Bet and Mina were dark. After a few minutes, he found that he was looking oftenest at Dora and Babette, and to a lesser extent at Gretchen, though the latter's Dutch cap seemed unromantic and precluded the element of mystery. Babette, a little dark, violet-eyed beauty in a tight-fitting hat, attracted him most. His eye come to rest on her at last. Babette, he whispered to himself. Beautiful Babette. The sound of the words, so melancholy and suggestive, like Villa or I'm happy at Maxim's and the phonograph, softened him, and turning over in his face, he sobbed into the pillow. He took hold of the bed rails over his head and, sobbing and straining, began to talk to himself brokenly. How he hated them and whom he hated. He listed a dozen, and what he would do to them when he was great and powerful. In previous moments like these, he had always rewarded Fat Gaspar for his kindness, but now he was like the rest. Basil set upon him, pummeling him unmercifully, or laughed sneeringly when he passed him, blind and begging on the street. He controlled himself as he heard Treadaway come in, but did not move or speak. He listened as the other moved about the room, and after a while became conscious that there was an unusual opening in the closets and bureau drawers. Basil turned over, his arm concealing his tear-stained face. Treadaway had an armful of shirts in his hand. What are you doing? Basil demanded. His roommate looked at him stonily. I'm moving in with Wales, he said. Ah. Treadaway went on with his packing. He carried out a suitcase full and another, took down some pennants and dragged his trunk into the hall. Basil watched him bundle his toilet things into a towel and take one last survey about the room's new Baroness to see if there were anything forgotten. Goodbye, he said to Basil without a ripple of expression on his face. Goodbye. Treadaway went out. Basil turned over once more and choked into the pillow. Ah, poor Babette, he sighed duskily. Poor little Babette, poor little Babette. Babette, svelte and piquant, looked down on him coquettishly from the wall. That's the end of... Would you call that a chapter? Scene 3 maybe? I don't know. I'm not sure about that one, it's a bit weird. I mean, he's obviously very upset, and you can tell he's not handling it well, and he's trying to hide it from his roommate. But also, the stuff with the posters is very strange. Like, getting 8 of them, immediately tearing 2 of them up. That's weird, that is. Don't know what's up with that. Right, get the 4. Dr. Bacon, sensing Basil's predicament and perhaps the extremity of his misery, arranged that he should go into New York after all. He went in the company of Mr. Rooney, a football coach and history teacher. At 20, Mr. Rooney had hesitated for some time between joining the police force and having his way paid through a small New England college. In fact, he was an odd specimen, and Dr. Bacon were planning to get rid of him at Christmas. Mr. Rooney's contempt for Basil was founded on the latter's ambiguous and unreliable conduct on the football field during the past season. He consented to take him to New York for reasons of his own. Basil sat meekly beside him on the train, glancing past Mr. Rooney's bulky body at the sound and the fallow fields on Westchester County. Mr. Rooney finished his newspaper, folded it up, and sank into a moody silence. He had eaten a large breakfast, and the exigencies of time had not allowed him to work it off with exercise. He remembered that Basil was a fresh boy, and it was time he did something fresh and could be called to account. The approachless silence annoyed him. Lee, he said suddenly with thinly assumed air of friendly interest, why don't you get wise to yourself? What, sir? Basil was startled from his excited trance this morning. I said, why don't you get wise to yourself? Said Mr. Rooney in a somewhat violent tone. You want to be the butt of the school all your time, eh? No, I don't. Basil was chilled. Couldn't all this be left behind just for one day? You don't get so fresh all the time. A couple of times in history class I could just about have broken your neck. Basil could think of no appropriate answer. Now playing football, continued Mr. Rooney. You didn't have any nerve. You could play better than a lot of them when you wanted, like that day against the Pomfret Seconds, but you lost your nerve. I shouldn't have tried for the second team, said Basil. Or too light. Should have stayed on the 3rd. You're yellow is the trouble. Now to get wise to yourself. In class you're always thinking of something else. You don't study, you'll never go to college. I'm the youngest boy in the 5th form, Basil said rashly. I think you're pretty bright, don't you? Cried Basil ferociously. And something seemed to occur to him that changed his attitude, and they rode for a while in silence. The train began to run through the thickly crusted communities near New York. He spoke again in a milder voice, with an air of having considered the matter for a long time. Lee, I'm going to trust you. Yes, sir? You go and get some lunch and then go on your show. I got some business of my own I got to attend to. And when I've finished, I'll try to get to the show. If I can, I'll anyhow meet you outside. Does that lead up? Yes, sir. I want you to open your mouth about this at school. I mean, about me doing business of my own. No, sir. Well, so we'll see if you keep your mouth shut for once, he said, making it fun. Then added on a note of moral sternness. And no drinks, you understand that? Oh, no, sir. It'll be a shock, Basil. He never tasted a drink, nor even contemplated the possibility, save the intangible and non-alcoholic champagne of his cafe dreams. On the advice of Mr. Rooney, he went for luncheon at the Manhattan Hotel near the station, where he ordered a club sandwich, French fried potatoes and a chocolate parfait. Out of the corner of his eye, he watched the nonchalant, debonair, blasé New Yorkers at neighbouring tables, invested them with a romance by which these possible fellow citizens of his from the Middle West lost nothing. School had fallen from him like a burden, but no more than an unneeded clamour, faint and far away. He even delayed the opening of the letter from this morning's mail which he found in his pocket, because it were addressed to him at school. He wanted another chocolate parfait, but being reluctant to bother the busy waiter any more, he opened the letter and spread it before him instead. It was from his mother. Dear Basil, this is written in the greatest haste, as I don't want to frighten you by the telegraphing. Grandfather is going abroad to take the waters, and he wants you and me to come too. The idea is that you'll go to school at Grenoble and Montreux for the rest of this year, and learn the language, and we'll be close by. As if you want to. I know how you like St. Regis and playing football and baseball, and of course there would be none of that. On the other hand, it would be a nice change, even as it postpones your entering Yale by an extra year. So as usual, I want you to do just as you like. We'll be leaving home almost as soon as you get this, and we'll come to Waldorf and come to the Waldorf in New York. You can come in and see us for a few days if we decide to stay. Think it over, dear. With love to my dearest boy, Mother. Basil got up from his chair with the dim idea of walking to Waldorf and having himself locked up safely until his mother come. Then, impelled to some gesture, he raised his voice, and in one of his first basso notes, called boomingly and without reticence for the waiter. No more St. Regis. No more St. Regis. He was almost straying with happiness. Oh gosh, he cried to himself. Oh golly, oh gosh, oh gosh. No more Dr. Bacon and Mr. Rooney and Brick Wales and Fat Gaspar. No more Bugs Brown and On Bounds and being called Bossy. He need no longer hate them, for they were impotent shadows in the stationary world that was a silent away from, sliding past, waving his hand goodbye. He pitied them. Goodbye. It required the din of 42nd Street to sober his maudlin joy. His hand on his purse to guard against the omnipresent pickpocket, he moved cautiously towards Broadway. What a day! He would tell Mr. Rooney why he need never go back. Perhaps it would be better to go back and let them know what he was going to do, while they went on and on in the dismal, dreary round of school. He found the theatre and entered the lobby, with its powdery, feminine atmosphere of a matinee. As he took out his ticket, his gaze was caught and held by a sculpted profile a few feet away. It was that of a well-built blond young man of about 20, with a strong chin and direct grey eyes. Basil's brain spun wildly for a moment, and then came the rest upon a name. More than a name, upon a legend, a sign in the sky. What a day! He had never seen the young man before, but from 1,000 pictures he knew beyond possibility of doubt that it was Ted Fay, the Yale football captain, who almost single-handedly beaten Harvard and Princeton last fall. Basil felt a sort of exquisite pain. The profile turned away. The crowd revolved, the hero disappeared, but Basil would know all through the next hours that Ted Fay were here too. In the rustling, whispering, sweet-smelling darkness of the theatre, he read the programme. It was a show of all shows that he wanted to see, and until the curtain actually rose, the programme itself had a curious sacredness, a prototype of the thing itself. But when the curtain rose, it became a waste paper that would be dropped carelessly on the floor. Act 1. The village green of a small town near New York. It was too bright and blinding to comprehend all at once, and it went so fast that from the very first, Basil felt he had missed things. He would make his mother take him again when she came, next week, tomorrow. An hour passed. It was very sad at this point. A sort of gay sadness, but sad. The girl, the man, what kept them apart even now? Oh, those tragic errors and misconceptions. So sad. Couldn't they look into each other's eyes and see? A blaze of light and sound, the resolution, anticipation, and imminent trouble, the act were over. He went out. He looked for Ted Fay and thought he saw him leaning rather moodily on a plush wall at the rear of the theatre, but he could not be sure. He bought cigarettes and lit one, and fancying the first puff he heard a blare of music, he rushed back inside. Act 2. The foyer of the Hotel Astor. Yes, she was indeed. Like a song, a beautiful rose that night. Waltz buoyed her up, brought her with her to a point of aching beauty, then let her slide back into the life across its last bars as a leaf slants to the earth across the air. The eye laughed for New York. Who could blame her if she were carried away by the glitter of it all, vanishing into the bright morning the amber window borders, when the distant and entrancing music as the door opened and closed that led to the ballroom, a toast to the shining town. Half an hour passed. Her true love brought her roses like herself, and she threw them scornfully at his feet. She laughed and turned the other and danced madly, wildly. Wait! A delicate tremble among the thin ornaments, the low curving note from the great strings. There it were again, poignant and aching, sweeping like a great gust of emotion across the stage, catching her again like a leaf helpless in the wind. Rose, rose, rose of the night, when the spring moon is bright you'll be fair. A few minutes later, feeling oddly shaken and exalted, Basil drifted outside with the crowd. The first thing upon which his eyes fell were the almost forgotten and now curiously metamorphosed spectre of Mr. Rooney. Mr. Rooney had, in fact, gone a little to pieces. He was, to begin with, wearing a different and much smaller hat than when he left Basil at noon. Secondly, his face had lost its somewhat green aspect, gross aspect, and turned a pure and even delicate white. And he was wearing his necktie and even portions of his shirt on the outside of his unaccountably wringing wet overcoat. How, in the short space of 4 hours, Mr. Rooney had got himself in such a shape is explicable only by the presence, or the pressure of confinement in a boys' school, upon a fiery outdoor spirit. Mr. Rooney was born to toil under the clear light of heaven, and perhaps, half-consciously, he read towards his inevitable destiny. Lee, I said dumbly, you ought to get wise to yourself. I'm going to put you wise to yourself. Avoid the ominous possibility of being put wise to himself in the lobby. Basil uneasily changed the subject. Aren't you coming to the show? He asked, flattering Mr. Rooney by implying that we're in any condition to come to the show. It's a wonderful show. Mr. Rooney took off his hat, displaying a ring and wet matted hair, a picture of reality momentary struggle for development in the back of his brain. You had to get back to school, he said in a sombre and unconvinced voice. There's another act, protested Basil in horror. I've got to stay for the last act. Swaying, Mr. Rooney looked at Basil, dimly realising that he put himself in the hollow of this boy's hand. All right, he admitted. I'm going to get something to eat. I'll wait for you next door. He turned abruptly, reeled a dozen steps, and curved dizzily into a bar adjoining the theatre. Considerable shaken, Basil went back inside. Act 3. The roof garden of Mr. Von Aster's house? No. Half an hour passed. Everything was going to be all right after all. The comedian were at his best now, the glad appropriateness of laughter after tears, and there were a promise of felicity in the bright tropical sky. One lovely plaintive duet, and then abruptly the long moment of incomparable beauty were over. Basil went into the lobby and stood and thought. The crowd passed out. His mother's letter and the show had cleared his mind of bitterness and vindictiveness. He was his old self, and he wanted to do the right thing. He wondered if it was the right thing to get Mr. Rooney back to school. He walked towards the saloon, slowed up as he came into it, and gingerly opening the swinging door, took a quick peer inside. He saw only that Mr. Rooney were not one of those drinking at the bar. He walked down the street a little way, came back and tried again. There were though the door with teeth to bite him, for he had the old-fashioned, Middle Western boy's horror of the saloon. The third time he was successful. Mr. Rooney were sound asleep at the table in the back of the room. Outside again, Basil walked up and down, considering. He would give Mr. Rooney half an hour. If at the end of that time he had not come out, he would go back to school. After all, Mr. Rooney had laid for him ever since the football season. Basil was simply washing his hands of the whole affair. In a day or so he would wash his hands at school. He made several turns up and down when, glancing up an alley that ran beside the theatre, his eyes were caught by the sign. Stage entrance. He could watch the actors come forth. He waited. Women streamed by him, but those were the days before glorification, and they took these drab people for wardrobe women or something. Then suddenly a girl came out with a man, and Basil turned and ran a few steps up the street as if afraid they'd recognise him, and ran back, breathing as if with an heart attack. The girl, a raging little beauty of 19, was her, and the young man by her side was Ted Fay. Arm in arm they walked past him, and irresistibly Basil followed. As they walked, she leaned towards Ted Fay in a way that gave him a fascinating air of intimacy. They crossed Broadway and turned into the Knickerbocker Hotel, and 20 feet behind them Basil followed, down to see them go into a long room set for their afternoon tea. They sat at a table for two, spoke vaguely to the waiter, and then, alone at last, bent eagerly towards each other. Basil saw that Ted Fay were holding their gloved hand. The tea room was separated only by an edge of potted furs from the main corridor. Basil went along to a lounge, which was almost up against their table, and sat down. Her voice was low and faltering, less certain than it had been in the play, and very sad. Of course I do, Ted. For a long time, as their conversation continued, she repeated, "Of course I do." Well, but I do, Ted. Ted Fay's remarks were too low for Basil to hear. Says next month he won't be put off anymore. I do in a way, Ted. It's hard to explain, but he's done everything for Mother and me. As you know, as kid and myself. You're a foolproof part, and any girl I gave it to we made right then and there. He's been awfully thoughtful. He's done everything for me. Basil's ears were sharpened by the intensity of his emotion, and now I could hear Ted Fay's voice too. "And you say you love me. And you see I promised to marry him more than a year ago. Tell him the truth, that you love me. Ask him to let you off. This isn't musical comedy, Ted." "That were a mean one," he said bitterly. "I'm sorry, dear Ted, darling, but you're driving me crazy, going on this way. You're making it so hard for me. I want to leave New Haven anyhow." "No, you're not. You're going to stay and play baseball this spring. Why, you're an ideal to those boys. Why, if you..." He laughed shortly. "You're a fun one to talk about ideals." "I'm not. I'm living up to my responsibility to Beltsman. You've got to make up your mind just like I am. We can't have each other." "Jerry, think what you're doing all my life whenever I hear that waltz." Basil got to his feet and hurried down the corridor, through the lobby and out of the hotel. He was in a state of wild emotional confusion. He did not understand all he had heard, but from his clandestine glimpse at the privacy of these two, with all the world his short experience could conceive at their feet, he had gathered that life for everybody was a struggle, sometimes magnificent from a distance, but always difficult and surprisingly simple and a little sad. "Now go on." Ted Fay would go back to Yale, put her picture in his bureau drawer and knock out home runs with the bases full this spring. At 8:30 the curtain would go up and she would miss something warm and young out of her life, something she had this afternoon. It was dark outside and Broadway was a blazing forest fire as Basil walked slowly along towards the point of brightest light. He looked up at the great intersecting planes of radiance with a vague sense of approval and possession. He would see it a lot now, and lay his restless heart upon this greater restlessness of a nation. He would come whenever he could get off from school. That were all changed. He would go to Europe. Suddenly Basil realised that he wasn't going to Europe. He could not forgo the moulding of his own destiny, just to alleviate a few months of pain. A conquest of the successive worlds, school, college in New York. That was his true dream that he had carried from boyhood into adolescence. And because of the jeers of a few boys, he had been about to abandon it and run ignominiously up a back alley. He shivered violently, like a dog coming out in the water, and simultaneously reminded of Mr. Rooney. A few minutes later he walked into the bar, past the quizzical eyes of the bartender and up to the table where Mr. Rooney still sat asleep. Basil shook him gently and firmly. Mr. Rooney stirred and perceived Basil. "Wise to yourself," he muzzled drowsily. "Wise to yourself and let me alone." "I am wise to myself," said Basil. "Honestly, I am wise to myself, Mr. Rooney. You ought to come with me into the washroom and get cleaned up. And you can sleep on the train again, Mr. Rooney. Come on, Mr. Rooney, please." That's the end of chapter 5. I'm not sure about this one. There's something to it, especially this chapter is, I don't know, it's a compelling little thing. The glimpse into the stage and the little, where it walks past. This glimpse into another life. The life of icons and idols, just as difficult and troubled as his own. Changing the shape of things. It's an odd idea too, the dream in New York. But it's not an uncommon one. Lots of people want to go to New York. Lots of rats want to go to New York. Everyone wants to go to New York. Famous place. Big place. Everything in the world there, isn't there? Still strange in the way it's told. Strange, but also gripping, I suppose. There's something in this chapter too. Basil sort of, I don't know, he doesn't become less annoying, but he seems to come into his own a bit, especially in that last little chunk there, after he has his little realisation. I don't know. Let's see how it ends, shall we? Chapter 5. For a long hard time, Basil got on bounds again in December and wasn't free again until March. An indulgent mother had given him no habit to work, and this were almost beyond the power of anything but life itself to remedy. But he made numerous new starts and failed and tried again. He made friends with a new boy named Maplewood after Christmas. They had a silly quarrel, and through the winter term, when the boys' school is shut in with itself and only partly assuaged from its natural savagery by indoor sport, Basil was snubbed and slighted a good deal for his real and imaginary sins, They were much alone. On the other hand, there were Ted, Faye and Rose of the night on the phonograph, all my love whenever I hear that waltz, and the remembered lights of New York, and the thought of what he was going to do in football next autumn, and the glamorous image of Yale and the open spring in the air. Fat Gaspar and a few others were nice to him now. Once, when he and Fat walked home together by accident from downtown, they had a long talk about actresses. They talked that Basil was enough not to presume upon afterwards. The smaller boy suddenly decided they approved of him, and a master who had hitherto disliked him put his hand on his shoulder, walked in a class one day. They will all forget eventually, maybe during summer. There would be new fresh boys in September. You would have a clean start next year. One afternoon in February, playing basketball, a great thing happened. He and Brick Wales were at forward on the second team, and in the fury of the scrimmage, the gymnasium echoed with a sharp slap in contact and shrill cries. Here you are, Bill, Bill! Basil had dribbled the ball down court, and Brick Wales free were crying for it. Here you are, Lee! Hey, Lee! Lee! Basil flushed and made a poor pass. He had been called by a nickname. It was a poor makeshift, but it was something more than a street bareness of his surname, or a term of derision. Brick Wales went on playing, unconscious that he had done anything in particular, or that he had contributed to the events by which another boy was saved from the army of the bitter, the selfish, the neurasthenic, and the unhappy. It isn't given us to know those rare moments when people are wide open and the lightest touch can wither or heal. A moment too late and we can never reach them by any more than this world. They will not be cured by our most efficacious drugs or slain with our sharpest swords. Lee! It could scarcely be pronounced, but Basil took it to bed with him that night, and thinking on it, holding it to him, happily to the last, fell easily to sleep. That's the end. It was strange. There's not much of a story there, really, if you look at it in the broad terms. It's more like a little slice. It feels like a part of a greater story. Maybe it is, I don't know. Maybe there are other Basil stories by Fitzgerald. Or maybe that's just what it is. Can't say, really. Still. Let's see then, what do we think? I'm not really sure. There's something to it. It's definitely got something going on with it. There's some meaning there, some ideas that sort of resonate and spark and have something to them, but there's not a lot to get your teeth into. I mean, obviously there's the sort of cruelty of boys and the natural horror of childhood, and there's some glimpse of growing from adolescence into adulthood, but I don't know really. It almost feels like it's hinting at more than it tells, and some of the most interesting bits sort of get passed over, like whatever Mr. Rooney got up to. I'm not sure of that one at all. I really am not. Still, I think there's something to it, at least. It's far from the worst we've read anyway, but what am I to say, I suppose? Not being the worst doesn't make it much good either, huh? Not much better, huh? Still. What else are you to say? Anyhow. There's no sense going over and over and saying I don't really get it, is there? I gave it a read. I see some things to it. I'm sure that there are other things that I don't see. All that's there is now is depression. Ugh. Those words did not come out cleanly from my mouth. Lord, right. Wow. Yeah, but I don't think I've got all of that. In fact, I think there's quite a deal of it I'm missing. Or maybe there's not. Maybe there's just not a lot to it. It feels hi. The way it's written feels less developed than some of the other stuff we've written. I wonder if this is one of Fitzgerald's early stories. I just don't know. I'm lacking too much context. I've had my drink of water. Now, so let's press on. Moving on to Crazy Sunday. Which, let's have an idea of how long this is. So, Crazy Sunday is not quite so long as Basil, but not much shorter. And then The last one is, which one? 3 hours between planes, which is considerable shorter than either of them, so we might have another hour. Insurance, we might wind up about 2 hours, we'll see. But yeah. Crazy Sunday. It was Sunday. Not a day, but rather a gap between 2 other days. Yeah, for all of them, their sets and sequences, the long waits under the crane that swung the microphone, the 100 miles a day by automobile to and fro across the country, the struggles of rival ingenuities in the conference rooms, the ceaseless compromise, the clash and strain of many personalities fighting for their lives. And now Sunday, with individual life starting up again, with a glow kindling in eyes that had been glazed with the monotony of the afternoon before. Slowly, as the hours waned, they came awake like puppet feet in a toy shop, an intense colloquy in a corner, lovers disappearing a neck in one all, and the feeling of hurry up, it's not too late, but for God's sake hurry before the blessed 40 hours of leisure are over. Joe Coles were right in continuity. He was 28 and not yet broken by Hollywood. He had what were considered nice assignments since his arrival 6 months before, and he submitted his scenes and sequences with enthusiasm. He referred to himself modestly as an act, but really did not think of it that way. His mother had been a successful actress. Joel had spent his childhood between London and New York, trying to separate the real from the unreal, or at least to keep one guess ahead. He was an handsome man with a pleasant cow-brown eyes that in 1913 had glazed out at Broadway audiences from his mother's face. When the invitation came, it made him sure that he were getting somewhere. Ordinarily, he did not go out on Sunday, but stayed sober and took work home with him. Recently, they had given him a Eugene O'Neill play destined for a very important lady indeed. Everything he had done so far had pleased Miles Cowman, and Miles Cowman was the only director of the lot who did not work under a supervisor and were responsible to the money men alone. Everything was clicking in a pace in Joel's career. This is Mr. Cowman's secretary, where you come to tea from 4 to 6 Sunday. He lives in Beverly Hills number. Joel flattered. It would be a party out of a top drawer. It would tribute to himself as a young man of promise. The Marion Davies crowd, the IATs, the big currency numbers, perhaps even Dietrich and Garbo and the marquee people. People who were not seen everywhere would probably be at Cowman's. I'd take anything to drink, he assured himself. Cowman were audibly tired of rummies, and thought it were a pity the industry could not get along without them. Joel agreed that writers drank too much. He did himself. He wouldn't this afternoon. He wished Miles would be in near him when the cocktails were passed to hear as succinct and obtrusive. No, thank you. Miles Cowman's house were built for great emotional moments. There were an air of listening, as if the far silences of its vistas had an audience. This afternoon it were thronged, as though people had been bidden rather than asked. Joel noted with pride that only 2 other writers from the studio were in the crowd, ennobled Linney and, somewhat to his surprise, Nat Kirk, who had evoked Cowman's impatient comments on drunks. Stella Cowman, Stella Walker of course, did not move on to her other guests after she spoke to Joel. She lingered. She looked at him with a sort of beautiful look that demands some sort of acknowledgement, and Joel drew quickly on the dramatic adequacy inherited from his mother. "Oh, you look about 16. Where's your kiddie car?" She was visibly pleased. She lingered. He thought he should say something more, something confident and easy. He had first met her when she was struggling for bits in New York. At the moment, the tray slid up, and Stella put a cocktail glass into his hand. "Everybody's afraid, aren't they?" he said, looking at it absently. "Everybody watches for everybody else's blunders, or tries to make sure there were people that would do them credit. Of course, that's not true in your house." He covered himself hastily. "I just meant generally in Hollywood." Stella agreed. She presented several people to Joel as if he were very important. Reassuring himself that Moll were at the other side of the room, Joel drank the cocktail. "Do you have a baby?" he said. "That's the time to look out. After a pretty woman has had her first child, she's very vulnerable, because she wants to be reassured about her own child. She's got to have some new man's unqualified devotion to prove herself she hasn't lost everything." Anything. "I never got anybody's unqualified devotion," Stella said rather resentfully. "They're afraid of your husband." "You think that's it?" She wrinkled her brow over the idea. Then the conversation interrupted at the exact moment Joel would have chosen. Her intentions had given him confidence, not from the join safe groups, the sneak to refuge under the wings of such acquaintances as he saw about the room. He walked to the window and looked out towards the Pacific, colourless under a sluggish sunset. It was good here, the American Riviera and all that, if there ever a time to enjoy it. The handsome, well-dressed people in the room, the lovely girls, and the lovely girls. You couldn't have everything. He saw Stella's fresh, boyish face, with her tired eyelids that always drooped a little over one eye, moving out among her guests, and he wanted to sit with her and talk a long time as if she were a girl instead of a name. He followed her to see if she paid anyone much attention as she had paid him. He took another cocktail, not because he needed confidence, but because she'd given him so much of it. And then he sat down beside the director's mother. Your son's got to be a legend, Miss Carmen. Oracle and a man of destiny and all that. Personally, I'm against him, but I'm in a minority. What do you think of him? Are you impressed? Surprised at how far he's gone? No, I'm not surprised. She said calmly. We always expected a lot from Miles. Well, that's unusual, remarked John. I always think all mothers are like Napoleon's mother. My mother didn't want me to have anything to do with the entertainment business. She wanted me to go to West Point and be safe. He always had every confidence in Miles. He stood by the built-in bar in the dining room with a good-humoured, heavy-drinking, highly-paid Nat Kerr. Made 100 grand during the year and lost 40 grand gambling, so now I've hired a manager. You mean an agent? Suggested John. No, I've got that too. I mean a manager. I make over everything to my wife, and then he and my wife get together and hand me out the money. I pay him $5,000 a year to hand me out my money. You mean your agent? No, I mean my manager. I'm not the only one. A lot of other irresponsible people have them. If you're irresponsible, why are you irresponsible enough to hire a manager? I'm just irresponsible about gambling. Look here. A singer performed. Joel and Nat went forward with the others to listen. Chapter 2. Right, well, that's the end of chapter 1, I should say. Taking a moment to breathe, we see a young man who's doing well in life, bored by his own success. Seems to be mingling well, but he has started drinking when he said he would not start drinking, and that to me is probably a foreshadowing of grim things to come. But we'll find out. Best not. Chapter 2. The singer reached Joel vaguely. He felt happy and friendly towards all the people gathered there. People of bravery and industry, superior to bourgeois that acted them in ignorance and loose living, who has no position of the highest prominence in a nation that for decades had wanted only to be entertained. He liked them. He loved them. Great waves of good feeling flowed through him. As the singer finished his number, and they were adrift towards the hostess to say goodbye, Joel had an idea. He gave them building it up, his own composition. It was only part of the trick. It amused several parties, and it might please Stella Walker. Possessed by the itch, his blood throbbing with the scarlet corpuscles of exhibitionism, he sought her. Of course, she cried. Please, do you need anything? Someone has to be the secretary that I'm supposed to be dictating to. I'll be her. As the word spread, the guests in the hall, already putting on their coats to leave, drifted back, and Joel faced the eyes of many strangers. He had a dim foreboding, realising that the man who had just performed were a famous radio entertainer. And someone said, shh, and they were alone with Stella, the centre of the sinister engine-like half-circle. Stella smiled up at him expectantly. He began. His burlesque were based upon the cultural limitations of Mr. Dave Silverstein, an independent producer. Silverstein would presume to be dictating a letter outlining the treatment of a story he'd brought. A story of divorce, the young generation and the foreign legion, he heard his voice saying, with the intonations of Mr. Silverstein. We've got to build up, see? A sharp pang of doubt struck him then. The faces surrounding him in the gently moulded light were intent and curious, but there were no ghosts of a smile anywhere. Directly in front of the great lover of the screen glared at him with eyes as keen as the eyes of a potato. Only Stella Walker looked up at him with a radiant, never faltering smile. We make him a Manchu type, and then we get a sort of Michael Ireland, only with a Honolulu atmosphere. Still no ripple in from the front, but in the rear a rustling, perceptible shift towards the left, towards the door. And she says she feels this sex appeal for him, and he burns out and says, oh, go on, destroy yourself. At some point he heard Nat Kerr snicker, and here or there a few encouraging faces, but as soon as he finished he had the sickening realisation that he'd made a fool of himself, and viewed an important section of the picture world, upon whose favour depended his career. For a moment he existed in the midst of confused silence, broken by a general trek for the door. He felt the undercurrent of derision that roared through his gossip. Then, all this was in the space of 10 seconds, the great lover, his eye hard and empty as an eye of a needle, shouted, "Boo! Boo!" voicing in an overtone what he felt with the mood of the crowd. It was a resentment of the professional towards the amateur, the community towards the stranger, the thumbs down and a clam. Only Stella Walker was still standing there, and thanking him as if he had been an unparalleled success, as if it hasn't occurred to her that anyone had liked her. As Nat Kerr helped him into his overcoat, a great well of self-disgust swept over him, and he clung desperately to his rule of never betraying an inferior emotion until he no longer felt it. "You're a flop," he said lightly to Stella. "Never mind. It's a good number when appreciated. Thank you for your cooperation." The smile did not leave her face. He growled rather drunkenly, and Nat drew him towards the door. The arrival of his breakfast awakened him into a broken and ruined world. Yesterday he were himself, a point of fire against an industry. Today he felt that he appeared under an enormous disadvantage, against those faces, against individual contempt and collective sneer. Whilst Nat, a Miles Calman, he would become one of the rummies, stripped of dignity, whom Calman regretted he was compelled to use. To Stella Walker, on whom he had forced a martyrdom to preserve the courtesy of her house, her opinion he did not dare guess. His gastric juices ceased to flow, and he set his poached eggs back on the telephone table. He wrote, "Dear Miles, you can imagine my profound self-disgust. I confess to a taint of exhibitionism at 6 o'clock in the afternoon in broad daylight. Good God, my apologies to your wife. Yours ever, Joel Coles." Joel emerged from his office, on the lot only to slink like a malefactor to the tobacco store. So suspicious were his manner that one of the studio police asked him to see his admission card. He had decided to eat lunch outside when that card, confident and cheerful, overtook him. "What do you mean you're in permanent retirement? What if that three-piece suit did boo you?" "Why, listen," he continued, drawing Joel into the studio restroom. "The night of one of his premieres at Grauman's, Joe Squires kicked his tail while we were bowing to the crowd. The am said Joe would hear from him later, but when Joe called him up at 8 o'clock the next day and said, 'I thought I was going to hear from you,' he hung up the phone." The preposterous story cheered Joel, and he found a gloomy consolation in staring at the group at the next table. The sad, lovely Siamese twins, the mean dwarves, the proud giant from the circus picture. But looking beyond at the yellow-stained faces of pretty women, their eyes all melancholy and startled with mascara, their ball gowns garish and full day, he saw a group who had been at Coleman's and winced. "Never again," he exclaimed aloud. "Absolutely my last social appearance in Hollywood." The following morning, a telegram awaited for him at his office. You were one of the most agreeable people at our party. Expect you at my sister June's buffet supper. You were one of the most agreeable people at our party. Expect you at my sister June's buffet supper next Sunday. Stella Walker Carmen. The blood rushed through his veins for a feverish minute. Incredulously, he read the telegram over. That's the sweetest thing I ever heard in my life. That's the end of chapter 2. Huh. Well. I'll be honest, I did not really expect for any of these to feel personally relatable to me. But as I stand here, talking to what may very well be an empty house, on a platform with thousands of other people doing the same thing, most of whom are bigger and more well established and better at it than me, I feel a terrible kinship with this man who is standing up and humiliating himself in front of a bunch of his peers and people he respects. Oh, that's a little bit kind, that is, if I'm honest. But yeah, I can understand it. You know, you think you've got something clever going on, you put it together, and there is a lukewarm and negative response, and suddenly you feel like you've got to dig yourself an hole and crawl into it. Lord. But I've done that a couple of times. Here's a fun fact. Last time I checked, the music video I put out 2 days ago still has not had a single view. And I think it's one of the good ones too. Lord. Ah well indeed. Still, nothing to be done about it. You just got to keep pressing on and telling yourself that you're the funniest, smartest, best person out there and that everyone else is just a fool who don't recognise your genius. At least if you're trying to do something you care about. I'm reading these books because Lamp makes me. And so Lamp's the one who's got to keep convincing himself he's a genius. But Lamp can do magic with his mind, which is sort of tangible proof, so I guess he doesn't have to worry about it so much. Anyway, I'm rambling, let's press on. Chapter 3. Crazy Sunday again. Joel slept until 11, and he read a newspaper to catch up with the past week. He lunched in his room on trout, avocado salad, and a pint of California wine. Dressing for the tea, he selected a pin-check suit, a blue shirt, a burnt orange tie. There were dark circles of fatigue under his eyes. In his second-hand car, he drove to the Riviera Apartments. As he was introducing himself to Stella's sister, Miles and Stella arrived in riding clothes. They had been quarrelling fiercely most of the afternoon on all the dark roads back of Beverly Hills. Miles Cameron, tall, nervous, with a desperate humour and the unhappiest eyes Joel ever saw, were an artist from the top of his curiously shaped head to his niggerish feet. Upon these last he stood firmly. He'd never made a cheap picture, though he had sometimes paid heavily for the luxury of making experimental flops. In spite of his excellent company, one could not be with him long without realising that he were not a well man. From the moment of their entrance, Joel's day bound itself up inextricably with theirs. As he joined the group around them, Stella turned away from it with an impatient little tongue click, and Miles Cameron said to the man who happened to be next to him, "Go easy on Eva Goebel. There's hell to pay about her at home." Miles turned to Joel. "I'm sorry I missed you at the office yesterday. I spent the afternoon at the analyst's." "You being psychoanalysed?" "I have been for months. First I went for claustrophobia, now I'm trying to get my whole life cleared up. And so it'll take over a year." Yeah, it's nothing the matter with your laugh, Joel assured him. Oh no? Well, Stella seems to think so. Ask anybody. And he'll tell you all about it, he said bitterly. Margot perched herself in the arm of Miles' chair. Joel crossed to Stella, who stood disconsolately by the fire. Thank you for your telegram, he said. It was darn sweet. I can't imagine anybody as good looking as you have been, being so good humoured. She was a little lovelier than he had ever seen her, and perhaps the unstained admiration in his eyes prompted her to unload onto him. It did not take long, for she was obviously in the emotional bursting point. And Miles has been carrying on this thing for 2 years, and I never know. Why, she was one of my best friends, always in the house. Finally, when people begin to come to me, Miles had to admit it. She sat down vehemently on the arm of Joel's chair. Her riding breeches were the colour of the chair, and Joel saw that the mass of her hair were made up of some strands of red gold and some of pale gold, so it could not be dyed, and she had no makeup. She was that good looking. Still quivering with the shock of her discovery, Stella found unbearable the spectacle of a new girl hovering over Miles. She led Joel into a bedroom and seated at either end of a big bed, they went on talking. People on their way to the washroom glanced in and made wisecracks, but Stella, emptying out her story, paid no attention. After a while, Miles stuck his head in the door and said, "There's no use trying to explain something to Joel in half an hour that I don't understand myself, and the psychoanalyst says it will take an whole year to understand." She talked in as if Miles were not there. She loved Miles, she said, under considerable difficulty. She had always been faithful to him. The psychoanalyst told Miles that he had a mother complex. In his first marriage, he transferred his mother complex to his wife, you see. And then his sex turned to me. When we married, the thing repeats itself. He transferred his mother complex to me, and all his libido turned towards other women. Joel knew that this probably wasn't gibberish. It sounded like gibberish. He knew Eva Goebel. She was a lovely person, older and probably wiser than Stella, who were a golden child. Miles now suggested impatiently that Joel come back with them, since Stella had so much to say. So they drove out to the mansion in Beverly Hills. Under the arched ceilings, the situation seemed more dignified and tragic. It were an eerie, bright night, dark, very clear outside, with all the windows, and Stella all rose gold, raging and crying round the room. Joel did not quite believe it in a picture actress's grief. They have other preoccupations. They are beautiful rose gold figures, blown full of life by writers and directors. And after hours they sit around and talk in whispers and giggle innuendos, and the ends of many adventures flow through them. Sometimes he pretended to listen, and instead thought how well she was got up. Sleek breeches with a matched set of legs in them, an Italian-coloured sweater with a little high neck, and a short brown chamois coat. He couldn't decide whether she were an imitation of an English lady, or an English lady were an imitation of her. She hovered somewhere between the realest of realities and the most blatant of impersonations. "Miles is so jealous of me that he's questioning everything I do," she cried scornfully. "When I was in New York, I wrote him that I'd been to the theatre with Eddie Baker. Miles was so jealous he phoned me 10 times in one day." "I was wild," Miles snuffled sharply, an habit he had in times of stress. "The analyst couldn't get any results for a week." Stella shook her head, still despairing. "You expect me to just sit in the hotel for 3 weeks?" "I don't expect anything. I admit that I'm jealous. I try not to be. I wanted that with Dr. Bridgebane, but it doesn't do any good. I was jealous of Joel this afternoon when you sat in the arm of his chair." "You were?" She stared up. "You were? Wasn't there somebody on the arm of your chair? Did you speak to me for 2 hours? You were telling each other was the Joel in the bedroom. When I think that woman, she seemed to believe that to omit Eva Goebel's name would be the less. She seemed to believe that to omit Eva Goebel's name would be less than a reality. Used to come here. All right, said Miles wearily. "I've admitted everything, and I feel as bad about it as you do." Turner Jolie began talking about pictures, while Stella moved restlessly along the far walls, her hands in her breeches pockets. "They've treated Miles terribly," she said, coming suddenly back in the conversation as if they'd never discussed her personal affairs. "Dear, tell him about old Belzer trying to change your picture." As she stood over him, practically over Miles, her eyes flashing with indignation in his behalf, Joe realised that he were in love with her. Startled with excitement, he got up to say good night. When Monday the week resumed, its workday rhythm, in sharp contrast to the theoretical discussions, the gossip and scandal of Sunday. There were the endless detail of script revision. Instead of a lousy dissolve, we can leave her voice on the soundtrack and cut the medium shot of the taxi from Bell's angle, or we can simply pull the camera back to include the station, hold it a minute, and then pound the row of taxis. By Monday afternoon, Joel had again forgotten that people whose business would have provided entertainment were ever privileged to be entertained. In the evening, he phoned Miles' house. He asked for Miles, but Stella come to the phone. "Do things seem better?" "Not particularly. What are you doing next Saturday evening?" "Nothing. The Perrys are giving a dinner theatre party, and Miles won't be here. And we was flying to South Bend to see the Notre Dame California game. I thought you might go with me in his place." After a long moment, Joel said, "Well, surely. If there's a conference I can't make dinner, I can get to the theatre. I'll say we can come. Joel walked to his office. Were the other strained relations of the Calmans? Would Miles be pleased, or did she intend that Miles shouldn't know of it? That would be out of the question. If Miles didn't mention it, Joel would. There were an hour or more before he could get down to work again. Wednesday there were a 4-hour wangle in a conference room crowded with planets and a nebulae of cigarette smoke. 3 men and a woman paced the carpet in turn, suggesting or condemning, speaking sharply or persuasively, confidently or despairingly. At the end, Joel lingered and talked to Miles. The man was tired, not with the exultation of fatigue, but the laugh tired, with his lids sagging and his beard prominent over the blue shadows near his mouth. Are you trying with I hear you flying an Notre Dame again. Miles looked beyond him and shook his head. I've given up the idea. Why? On account of you. Still he didn't look at Joel. What the hell, Miles? That's why I've given it up. He broke into a perfunctory laugh at himself. I can't tell what Stella might do just out of spite. She's invited you to take her to the Perrys, hasn't she? I wouldn't enjoy the game. The fine instinct that moved swiftly and confidently on the set mumbled so weakly and helplessly through his personal life. Look, Miles, said Joel frowning, I've never made any passes whatsoever at Stella. If you're really seriously cancelling your trip on account of me, I won't go to the Perrys with her. I won't see her. You can trust me, absolutely. Miles looked at him carefully now. Maybe, he shrugged his shoulders. Anyhow, there'd just be somebody else. I wouldn't have any fun. Yeah, you seem to have much confidence in Stella. She told me she'd always been true to you. Maybe she has. In the last few minutes, several more mustard had shagged around Miles' mouth. How can I ask anything after what's happened? How can I expect her? He broke off and his face grew harder as he said, I'll tell you one thing, right or wrong and no matter what I've done, if I ever had anything when I'd divorce her, can't have my pride out, that would be the last straw. You're starting to annoy Joel, but he said, Won't you calm down about the Eve Goble thing? Nah, Miles snuffled pessimistically. I can't get over it either. Thought it were finished. I'm trying not to see her again, but you know it ain't easy. Just to drop something like that. He isn't some girl I kissed last night in the taxi. The psychoanalyst says, I know, Joel interrupted. Stella told me. This was depressing. Well, as far as I'm concerned, if you go to the game, I won't see Stella. I'm sure Stella has nothing on her conscience about anybody. Maybe not, Miles repeated listlessly. Anyhow, I'll stay and take her to the party. Say, he said suddenly, I wish you'd come too. I've got to have somebody sympathetic to talk to. That's the trouble. I've influenced Stella in everything. Especially I've influenced her so that she likes all the men I like. It's very difficult. It must be, Joel agreed. That's the end of chapter 4. This is a weird relationship that's developing. This fella, Joel, seems to be falling in between this man and his wife. Quite funny. That's how people is though. All very strange. All very weird about one another and relationships and such. Every person in the world, eh? Still, that's the way of things. That is the way of things. At least in this case, there's someone clearly in the wrong, and your Miles haven't been running about. I must admit, it's funny that they're using the old Freudian psychology, which, I mean, obviously at the time it were current, I suspect, but it's not so, not quite so realistic now, is it? Which makes Joel sound a bit prescient, sounding like nonsense to him, being that it was nonsense. Alright, let's press on then. Chapter 4. Joel could not get to the dinner. Self-conscious in his silk hat against the unemployment, he waited for others in front of the Hollywood Theatre and watched the evening parade. Obscurely replicas of bright particular picture stars, spavined men in polo coats, a stomping dervish with a beard and staff of an apostle, a pair of cheap Filipinos in collegiate clothes, remind us that this corner of the Republic opened in the 7 seas, along a fantastic carnival of young shouts which proved to be a fraternity initiation. The line split the past 2 smart limousines and stopped at the curb. There she was, in a dress like ice water, made in 1,000 pale blue pieces, with icicles trickling in its front. He started forward. Do you like my dress? There's Miles. He flew to the game after all. He left yesterday morning, at least I think. She broke off. I just got a telegram from South Bend saying he's starting back. I forgot. You know all these people? The party of 8 moved into the theatre. Miles had gone after all, and Joel wondered if he should have come. During the performance, was Stella a profile under the pure grey and light hair? He thought no more about Miles. Once he turned and looked at her, and she looked back at him, smiling and meeting his eye for as long as he wanted. Between the acts they smoked in the lobby, and she whispered, "We're all going to the opening of Jack Johnson's nightclub. I don't want to go, do you?" "Do we have to?" "I suppose not," she hesitated. "I'd like to talk to you. I suppose we'd go to our house, if I were only sure." Again she hesitated. Joel asked, "Sure of what?" "Sure that... Oh, I'm haywire, I know. How can I be sure Miles went to the game?" You mean you think he's with Eva Goebel? "No, not so much that. But supposing he was here watching everything I do. You know Miles does odd things sometimes. Once he's wanted a man with a long beard to drink tea with him. And I sent down to the casting agency for one and drank tea with him all afternoon. Oh, and he sent down to the casting agency for one and drank tea with him all afternoon. That's different. He sent you a wire from South Bend. That proves he's at the game." After the play, they said goodnight to the others at the curb and were answered by looks of amusement. They slid off along the Golden Garish thoroughfare through the crowd that had gathered around Stella. You see, you could have arranged the telegram," Stella said, "very easily." That was true. With the idea that perhaps her uneasiness was justified, Joel grew angry. If Miles had trained a camera on them, he felt no obligation towards Miles. Aloud he said, "That's nonsense." There were Christmas trees already in the shop windows, and the full moon over the boulevard were only a prop. As scenic as the giant boudoir lamps on the corners. On into the dark foliage of Beverly Hills that flamed as eucalyptus by day. Joel saw only the flash of white face under his own, the arc of her shoulders. She pulled away suddenly and looked up at him. "Your eyes look like your mother's," she said. "I used to have a scrapbook full of pictures of her." "Your eyes are like your own, and not a bit like any other eyes," he answered. Something made Joel look out into the grounds as they went into the house, as if Miles were lurking in the shrubbery. A telegram waited on the hall table. She read it aloud. "Chicago. Home tomorrow night. Thinking of you, love. Miles." "You see," she said, throwing the slip back on the table. "He could easily have faked that." She asked the butler for drinks and sandwiches and ran upstairs while Joel walked in the empty reception rooms. Strolling about, he wandered to the piano where he had stood in disgrace 2 Sundays before. "We could put over," he said aloud, "a story of divorce, the younger generation, and the Foreign Legion." His thoughts jumped to another telegram. "You were one of the most agreeable people at our party." An idea occurred to him. If Stella's telegram had been purely a gesture of courtesy, then it were likely that Miles had inspired it, for it were Miles who had invited him. Probably Miles had said, "Send him a wire, he's miserable, he thinks he's queered himself." They fitted in with, "I've influenced Stella in everything, especially I've influenced her so she likes all the men I like." A woman would do a thing like that because she felt sympathetic. Only a man would do it because he felt responsible. When Stella came back into the room, he took both her hands. "I have a strange feeling that was sort of pawn in a spark game you're playing against Miles," he said. "Help yourself to a drink. And the odd thing is that I'm in love with you anyhow." The telephone rang and she freed herself to answer it. "Another wire from Miles," she announced. He says he dropped it at the aeroplane in Kansas City." "I suppose he asked to be remembered to me." "No, he just says he loved me. I believe he does. He's so very weak." "Come sit beside me," Joel urged her. It were early. It was still a few minutes short of midnight, a half hour later, and Joel walked to the coal hearth and said tersely, "I mean, you haven't any curiosity about me?" "Not at all. You attract me a lot and you know it. The point is that I suppose I really do love Miles. Obviously. And tonight I feel uneasy about everything." He wasn't angry, or even faintly relieved that a possible entanglement were avoided. Still, as he looked at her, the warmth and softness of her body, though in a cold blue costume, he knew she was one of the things he would always regret. "I've got to go," he said. "I'll phone a taxi." "Nonsense, there's a chauffeur on duty." He winced at her readiness to have him go, and seeing this she kissed him lightly and said, "You're sweet, Joel." And suddenly 3 things happened. He took down his drink at a gulp, the phone rang loud as though the house and the clock in the hall struck in trumpet notes. 9, 10, 11, 12. And that's the end of chapter 4. I'm not sure about that. The phone ringing just as she kissed him makes me wonder if maybe Miles were watching. Anyhow, not really sure. I think I'm just going to press on. I'm too curious to what happened next. Right? 5. It was Sunday again. Joel realised that he had company at the theatre this evening with the work of the week still hanging about him like cerements. He had made love to Stella as he might attack some matter to be cleaned up hurriedly before the day's end. But this was Sunday, a lovely lazy perspective of the next 24 hours unrolled before him. Every minute was something to be approached with longing and direction. Every moment held the germ of innumerable possibilities. Nothing were impossible. Everything was just beginning. He poured himself another drink. With a sharp moan, Stella slipped forward inertly by the telephone. Joel picked her up and laid her on the sofa. He squirted soda water on an handkerchief and slapped it over her face. The telephone mouthpiece was still grinding as he put it to his ear. The plane fell just this side of Kansas City. The body of Miles Coleman has been identified, and he hung up the receiver. Lie still, he said, stalling as Stella opened her eyes. Oh, what happened? She whispered. Call them back. Oh, what's happened? I'll call them right away. What's your doctor's name? They say Miles was dead. Lie quiet. Is that servant still on? Hold me, I'm frightened. He put his arm around her. I want the name of your doctor, he said sternly. It may be a mistake, but I want someone here. It's Doctor... Oh, God, is Miles dead? Joel ran upstairs and searched through the strange medicine cabinets for spirits of ammonia. When he come down, Stella cried, He isn't dead. I know he isn't. This is part of his scheme. He's torturing me. I know he's alive. I can feel he's alive. I want to get hold of some close friends of yours, Stella. You can't stay here alone tonight. Oh, no, she cried. I can't see anybody. You stay. I haven't got any friends. She got up, tears streaming down her face. Oh, Miles is my only friend. He's not dead. He can't be dead. I'm going there right away and see. Get a train. You'll have to come with me. You can't. There's nothing you can do tonight. I want you to tell me the name of some woman I can call. Lois, Joan, Cartman. Isn't there somebody? Stella stared at him blindly. Eva Goebel was my best friend, she said. Joel thought of Miles, his sad and desperate face in the office 2 days before. In the awful silence of his death, all were clear about him. He was the only American-born director with both an interesting temperament and an artistic conscience, meshed into an industry that he had paid with his ruined nerves for having no resilience, no healthy cynicism, no refuge, only a pitiful and precarious escape. There was a sound at the outer door. It opened suddenly and there were footsteps in the hall. Miles! Stella screamed. Is it you, Miles? Oh, it's Miles! A telegraph boy appeared in the hallway. I couldn't find the bell. I heard you talking inside. The telegram were a duplicate of the one that had been phoned. While Stella read it over and over, as though it were a black lie, Joel telephoned. It was still early and he had difficulty getting anyone. And finally he succeeded in finding some friends. He made Stella take a stiff drink. You stay here, Joel, she whispered as though she were half asleep. You won't go away. Miles liked you. He said you... She shivered violently. Oh my God, you don't know how alone I feel. Her eyes closed. Put your arms around me. Miles had a suit like that. She started bolt upright. Think of what he must have felt. He was afraid of almost everything anyhow. She shook her head dazedly. Suddenly she seized Joel's face and held it close to hers. You won't go. You like me. You love me, don't you? Don't call up anybody. Tomorrow's time enough. You stay here with me tonight. He stared at her, first incredulously and then with shocked understanding. In her dark groping, Stella was trying to keep Miles alive by sustaining a situation in which she had figured, as if Miles' mind could not die so long as the possibilities that had worried him still existed. It was a distraught and tortured effort to stave off the realization that he was dead. Resolutely, Joe went to the phone and called a doctor. Don't call anybody, Stella cried. Come back here and put your arms around me. Is Dr. Bales in? Joel, Stella cried, I thought I could count on you. Miles liked you. He was jealous of you. Cole, come here. And then, if he betrayed Miles, she would be keeping him alive. If he were really dead, how could he be betrayed? It's just had a very severe shock. Can you come at once and get hold of a nurse? Joel! Now the doorbell and the telephone began to ring intermittently, and automobiles were stopping in front of the door. You're not going, Stella begged him. You're going to stay, aren't you? No, he answered. I'll be back if you need me. Standing on the steps of the house, which now hummed and palpitated with the life that flutters around death like protective leaves, he began to sob a little in his throat. Everything he touched, he did something magical too, he thought. He even brought that little gamin alive and made her a sort of masterpiece. And then, an hell of a hole he leaves behind in this damn wilderness already. And then with a certain bitterness, oh yes, I'll be back. I'll be back. That's the end. That's the end. Oh Lord. I'm not sure what to make of that again. I think it were better than Basil, but I don't think I understand relationships enough to really get that. I don't have a lot of experience with them being a rat, and having just been a normal rat before I was come down here and haven't been alone ever since. So I don't know that I've got a great perspective on this. But it seems to me, at least best I can figure, that he thought he loved her, but actually he loved him. Loved the husband. Not maybe in like a romantic manner, but in this sort of idealised way. I mean, it says at the end, everything he touched was made wonderful. Like he with his granddaughter. I mean, the reason he came to the first party was because he was invited by Miles, right? And so he sort of begins this affair, or begins trying towards this affair with a woman, not because he actually likes her for her particular, because they don't. Maybe he does. I don't know. I can't really make it out. But because, in some way, he does it because, in doing so, he's in the role of Miles. He's closer to him by his closeness with her. I don't know. I'm sort of torn on this one. It's a pretty tragic thing. And I think it probably hurts him more at the end because Miles going away to this game with Notre Dame proves that he did trust him. He took his words to heart. In fact, in a sort of a way, it's Joel's fault because he told him, he reassured him that he wouldn't make a move with or on his wife. And then he sort of did in the end too. So he reassured him enough that Miles went away to die. And then he betrayed him as well. Actually, given that, it's actually a pretty fucking gutting revelation of that to happen. No wonder he sort of felt compelled. I'm not sure what to think of him, really. I mean, I appreciate that he'd done the right thing at the end there. She's throwing herself on him, and he clearly wanted her beforehand. But he doesn't take advantage, which, I don't know. I mean, I want to say it's like admirable, but it's really just a bare minimum. In these sort of situations, you always hear about people doing the horrible things, so you want to be relieved. But also, he did make a move on her when she were, you know, sad and vulnerable. Was she bad? I don't know. I mean, she was definitely messed up about it. He definitely had a thing for her, but then, I don't know. I think it's hard to sort of say in places like that. Like Miles has been unfaithful to her. Does that make her cheating justified? Does it make it fair, or does it just make it one more evil to be done? I think if you were Joel, you'd feel pretty awful about it after the fact, being that, you know, he went out trusting you and then he died because of it, and you were trying to make a move on his wife. I don't know. I think life's like that, isn't it? It's messy. People have this idea of good and bad in their heads, doing the right thing, but no situation's ever really simple. I mean, he's in the wrong, I'm not going to deny that. Whether or not Miles was, but Stella was in the right, cheating on him, or Miles after he cheated on her. The man moving in to cheat or to help cheat, I don't know, reassuring the other side of the relationship, making the move. It's very scummy. I don't know. It's all very tumultuous. It feels very, how'd you say, eccentric. I mean, it feels very Hollywood in a way. Everyone in it weird and eccentric and over the top. Like he says sometimes, caricatures of people rather than people themselves. The entertainment, not the entertained. Imitations of people, and yet the realest people of them all. I don't know, really. It sort of feels like it did when I was reading Dubliners, where there's clearly more to it than I'm getting. I think there's some layers here that I'm missing. I think some of it might be cultural and like historical. I think there was, I don't know, there's something to the time that I might be, or there's something I might be getting to it for more of the time. There's some cultural stuff here that I'm missing, but also just, I mean, I think it's meant to be tumultuous, right? Like, as a story, it's clearly, how'd you put it? I mean, it is a tumultuous story. It's confusing, it's over the top, it's a lot, really. I think not knowing how you're supposed to feel about it is what you're supposed to feel about it to a certain extent. Still, I think I rate it. I mean, I'm talking about it this much, there's got to be something to it. I think I enjoyed it. All told, I think I enjoyed it, but who's to say, you know? Anyhow, nothing doing there. So let's have a quick drink of water and then we'll get on to things. So we got our last one, 3 hours between planes, which is just a very short one. These two last ones will last us about 45 minutes apiece. This one I don't think will last us quite 30 minutes. In fact, it might not last us 20. So we'll see how we get on. Take our time with it. I don't know why I'm saying this like 2 hours is a particular thing I need to be doing. Just in my head, you know, every hour is a sort of marker. So if I do this and I end at 150, then I've ended up an hour long stream. But if I do 2, I've ended up a 2 hour stream. I don't even know why I want to do long streams. In fact, I sort of don't. I've been streaming every day this month so far. 26 days and counting. And I sort of promised myself that I'd just make sure I did it every day, even if I only did a half hour. I don't know. I like the idea of doing longer ones. There's some bigger books I've seen around here, some proper novels. I'm sort of hoping the Londonathon gets some more traction, really. I'd like to try doing all 10 of them and then the old novel, just to see how long it takes and how it takes out of me. I sort of wonder if I can build up to it. I don't know if you can build resilience in your voice by practice, but I hope you can. I have been suffering less of late. I don't get the scratches so much in my voice. At least not so much. I still get them occasional, but I don't know. I just don't know. Anyway, I know at some point I'm either going to have to start breaking into longer ones or start doing very, very many part series. I've never really read any long novels. I think the longest thing I've done is still, Dubliners might have been longer than White Fang, but that still took me 3 days. And White Fang I did in 4 parts. Anyway, I'm talking myself into a fair bit of flurry here. Let's get on to the last one before I talk myself in circles again, eh? So, right. 3 hours between planes. There were a wild chance, but Donald were in the mood, healthy and bored. With a sense of task and duty done, he were now rewarding himself, maybe. When the plane landed, he stepped out into a mid-western summer night and headed for the isolated Pueblo airport, conventionalised as an old-bred railway depot. He did not know whether she were alive or living in this town, or what were her present name. With mountain excitement, he looked through the phone book for her father, who might be dead too, somewhere in these 20 years. No. Judge Armin Holmes, Hillside 3194. A woman's amused voice answered his inquiry for Miss Nancy Holmes. Nancy is Miss Walter Gifford now, who's this? Donald hung up without answering. He found out what he wanted to know, and in only 3 hours, he didn't remember any Walter Gifford. There were another suspended moment while he scanned the phone book. She might have married out of town. No, Walter Gifford. Hillside 1991. Blood flowed back into his fingertips. Hello? Hello, there's Miss Guilford there. It's an old friend of ours. This is Mr. Guilford. He remembered, or thought he remembered, the funny magic in the voice. This is Donald Plum. I haven't seen you since I was 12 years old. Ah, they're not rightly surprised. Very polite. But he could distinguish in it neither joy nor certain recognition. Donald, added the voice. This time there was something more in it than struggle in memory. When did you come back into town? And cordially, where are you? I'm out at the airport, just for a few hours. Well, come up and see me. Surely you're just going to bed. Heavens no, she exclaimed. Oh, sorry. I just realised I've the last lines, 2 lines have been out. Donald, added the voice. This time there was something more in it than struggle in memory. When did you come back into town? And cordially, where are you? I'm at the airport for just a few hours. Well, come up and see me. Surely you're just going to bed. Heavens no, she exclaimed. I was sitting here having a highball by myself. Just tell your taxi man. On his way, Donald analysed the conversation. His words at the airport established that he had retained his position in the upper bourgeoisie. Nancy's aloneness might indicate that she had matured into an unattractive woman without friends. Her husband might be either away or in bed, and, because she were always 10 years old in his dreams, the eyeball shocked him, but he adjusted himself with a smile. She was very close to 30. At the end of a curved drive, he saw a dark-haired little beauty standing against the door, lighted door, a glass in her hand. Startled by a final materialisation, Donald got out of the cab, saying, Miss Guilford. She turned on the porch light and stared at him, wide eyes and tentative. My smile broke through the puzzled expression. Donald, it is you. You're changed, son. Oh, this is remarkable. As they walked inside, their voices jingled the words all these years, and Donald felt a sinking in his stomach. This derived in part from a vision of the last meeting, when she rode past him on the bicycle, cutting him dead, in part from fear lest they have nothing to say. It was like a college reunion, but there the failure to find the past was disguised by the hurried boisterous occasion. Again, aghast, he realised this might be a long and empty hour. He plunged in desperately. You always were a lovely person, but I'm a little shocked to find out you as beautiful as you are. It worked. The immediate recognition of their charged state, a bold compliment, made them interested in strangers instead of fumbling childhood friends. Have a highball? She asked. No, please don't think I've become a secret drinker. This was a blue night. I expected my husband, but he wired he'd be 2 days longer. It's very nice, Donald, and very attractive. Rather your type and colouring. She hesitated. I think he's interested in someone in New York. I don't know. After seeing you, sounds impossible, he assured her. I was married for 6 years, and there were a time I tortured myself that way. Then one day I just put my jealousy out of my life forever. After my wife died, I was very glad of that. It was a very rich memory, nothing mild or spoiled or hard to think over. She looked at him attentively and sympathetically as she spoke. I'm very sorry, she said. After a proper moment, you've changed a lot. It's in your head. I remember Father saying that boy has a brain. You probably argue against it. I was impressed. Then I thought everybody had a brain. That's why it sticks in my mind. What sticks in your mind? He asked, smiling. Suddenly Nancy got up and walked a little way away. Ah, now, she reproached him. That isn't fair. I suppose I was a naughty girl. You were not, he said stoutly. And I will have a drink now. As she poured it, her face still set down from him, he continued. You think you're the only little girl who ever kissed? Do you like the subject? She demanded. A momentary irritation mounted, she said. What the hell? We did have fun, like in the song. On the sleigh ride. Yes, and somebody's picnic. Trudy James. And Frontac, that, those summers. It was the sleigh ride he remembered most, and kissing her cool cheeks in the straw in one corner while she laughed up at the cold white stars. A couple next to him had their backs turned, and he kissed her little neck and ears and never her lips. And the Max party where they played post office, I couldn't go because they had the mumps, he said. I don't remember that. Oh, you were there, and you were kissed and all crazy with jealousy like I've never been before or since. Funny, I don't remember. Maybe I wanted to forget. But why? He asked in amusement. We did perfectly innocent kids. Nasty, whenever I talked to my wife about our past, I told her you were the girl I loved almost as much as I loved her. I think I really loved you just as much. When we moved out of town, I carried you like a cannonball on my insides. You were that much stirred up? Oh, God, yes, yeah. He suddenly realised that they were standing just 2 feet from each other. He was talking as if he loved her in the present, and she was looking up at him with her lips half parted and a clouded look in her eyes. Go on, she said. I'm ashamed to say I like it. I didn't know you were so upset then. I thought it was me who was upset. You? He exclaimed. Don't you remember throwing me out of the drugstore? You laughed. You stuck at your tongue at me. I don't remember at all. It seemed to me you did the throwing over. Her hand fell lightly, almost consolingly on his arm. I've got a photograph book upstairs I haven't looked at for years. I'll pick it out. Donald sat for 5 minutes with 2 thoughts. First, the hopeless possibility of reconciling when different people remembered about the same event. And secondly, that, in a frightening way, Nancy moved him as a woman, as she once moved him as a child. Half an hour had developed an emotion that he had not known since the death of his wife. He had never hoped to know again. Side by side on the couch, they opened the book between them. Nancy looked at him, smiling, very happy. Oh, this is such fun, she said. Such fun that you're so nice. You remember me, sir, beautifully. Let me tell you, I wish I'd known it then. After you'd gone, I'd hated you. What a pity, he said gently. Not now, she reassured him, and then impulsively. Kiss and make up? That isn't being a good wife. That isn't being a good wife, she said after a minute. I really don't think I've kissed 2 men since I was married. You were excited, you must have been confused. Had he kissed Nancy, or a memory, or this lovely trembling stranger who looked away from him quickly and turned a page of the book? Wait, he said, I don't think I could see a picture a few seconds. You won't do it again? I don't feel so very calm myself. Donald said one of those trivial things that cover so much ground. Wouldn't it be awful if we fell in love again? Stop it, she laughed, very breathlessly. It's all over. It was a moment I'll have to forget. Don't tell your husband. Why not? Usually I tell him everything. It'll hurt him. Don't ever tell a man such things. Alright, I won't. Kiss me once more, I said inconsistently, but Nancy had turned a page and was pointing eagerly at a picture. Here's you, she cried, right away. He looked. You were a little boy in shorts, standing up here with a sailboat in the background. I remember, she laughed triumphantly, the very day it was taken. Kitty took it and I stole it from her. For a moment, Donald failed to recognise himself in the photo, and bending closer, he failed utterly to recognise himself. That's not me, he said. Oh yes, it was at Frontesac, the summer we used to go to the cave. What cave? There are only 3 days in Frontesac. Again he strained his eyes at the very slightly yellow picture. That isn't me. That's Donald Bowers. We did look rather alike. Now she was staring at him, leaning back, seeming to lift away from him. But you're Donald Bowers, she explained. Her voice rose a little. No, you're not. You're Donald Plant. I told you on the phone. She was on her feet, her face faintly horrified. Plant Bowers, I must be crazy. It wasn't that drink. I was mixed up a little when I first saw you. Look here, what have I told you? He tried for a monkish calm as he turned a page in the book. Nothing at all, he said, pictures that did not include him formed and reformed before his eyes. Frontesac, cave, Donald Bowers. You threw me over. Nancy spoke from the other side of the room. We'll never tell this story, she said. Stories have a way of getting around. There isn't any story. He hesitated, but he thought, so she was a bad little girl. And now suddenly he was filled with a wild, raging jealousy of little Donald Bowers, who he had banished jealously from his life forever. And the 5 steps he took across the room, he crushed out 20 years in the existence of Walter Gifford with his stride. Kiss me again, Nancy, he said, sitting on one knee beside her chair, with his hand upon her shoulder. Nancy strained away. You said you had to catch a plane. It's nothing. I can miss it. It's of no importance. Please go, she said in a cool voice. And please try to imagine how I feel. You act as if you don't remember me, he cried. As if you don't remember Donald Plant. I do. I remember you, but it was all so long ago. Her voice grew out again. The taxi number is Crestwood, 8484. On his way to the airport, Donald shook his head from side to side. He was completely himself now, but he could not digest the experience. Only as the plane roared up into the dark sky and its passengers became a different entity from the corporate world below, did he draw a parallel from the fact of its flight. For 5 blinding minutes he had lived like a madman in 2 worlds at once. He had been a boy of 12 and a man of 32. Indissolubly and helplessly commingled. Donald had lost a good deal too in those hours between the planes. But since the second half of life is a long process of getting rid of things, that part of the experience probably didn't matter. That's the end of the 3 hours between flights. That's a funny little twist, I must admit. Coming back to your hometown, which got me up with a girl who you liked, finding that she actually was carrying a flame for you the old time, despite breaking things off with you, and to find out that no, she's actually carrying a flame for another fella chap called Donald who she was running around with. That's a bit wicked, that is. It's not told in a sort of laughing manner that I would normally get enjoyment from, but there's some wickedness to that little twist. But its tone is pretty stolid and serious, all told, really. Well, I'm trying to think what to say to that, really. I don't know. I liked it a bit. It was a bit lighter than most of the rest of the Fitzgerald we read. A little more wry, a little more humorous, but I suspect all told it's a little bit There's not a whole lot to it, really. It's a very short story, but I think it's a fun little scene, a little glimpse of things, but I mean, I guess it makes sense. It feels like the idea of a long layover in a flight, 3 hours in a town. Just a glimpse of a life that was, but wasn't, or could have been. And then taken apart again, just as quick as flying out. I know, but it did only take us about 15 minutes. And now I've got nothing left to say, really. I don't know, there was a lot to that, really. But let's talk about Fitzgerald a bit overall, if I I can, Lord. I don't know if I can really. I think he's mostly quite a maudlin author. Most of his stories are fairly sad in some way or another. I mean, today let's go over what we've done. Well, let's go back to the. I've just moved over. Let's go back to his titles and go through them. So we've had Babylon Revisited. That were a pretty miserable one about a man trying to do the right thing. Too Wrong. God, that was terribly miserable. That one perhaps the most devastating story I've written in a while. Cut Blast Poem. About the dissolution of one's life and a cursed object. The Lost Decade. I don't know if I'd say it was miserable, but it was a little bit maudlin. Mostly just confusing, if I'm honest. Basil, the Freshest Boy, reasonably sad, reasonably miserable, but in a sort of hopeful way. Give that one a day. Crazy Sunday, yeah, that one. I mean, definitely a sad end. Lighter tone most of the way through, but definitely a sad end. And then, oh, hey, Discipline, good to see you, man. You caught us just as we finished reading for the day. Your timing is entirely impeccable. Still good to have you. But yeah, we were just talking over the general approach that Fitzgerald has to his writing, which is to say, terrible misery and seemingly all of it. But yeah, you just missed a very funny story where a man went back to his hometown to hook up with his childhood sweetheart, only to find that she misremembered him as another man with the same first name, and they had been making out and making eyes at each other, completely misunderstanding how things were going on, which was quite funny. Yeah, good to have you, man. Right. Where am I? But yeah, I appreciate it. You are, you are the third person who has ever typed in my chat who isn't a robot, so I strongly appreciate you being there. But yeah. Still, I feel like I should celebrate the occasion, Lord. Let's see, have we got something short I could read that might make some occasion? Got some twain. Let's see what we got. Oh, we could do On The Decay of the Outer Line. That's a good one. Yeah. We'll make a rereading of that. We've been to do it for a while because it's a very fun one. So if you care to stick around, I'll do a little story of twain. How's that? Let's see, where were we? Here we are. So I have read this one before on stream, but it's very fun. It's quite short, so it should just be a little mouthful. Give you a taste. And it is an essay by Mark Twain, arguing in favour of deceit and lying in general life. So yeah, we'll give it a go. So yeah, as I always say to no one, feel free to tell me if you need me to go over something again or if you missed something, and feel free to chime in if you've got any comments. Yeah, and I'll stop for a little bit of discussion again. On the Decay of the Art of Lying, essay for discussion, read at a meeting of the Historical and Antiquarian Club of Hartford, and offered for $30 prize, now first published. With an editor's note stating that it did not take the prize. Okay, cool. Well, we'll see if we can get through. Observe, I do not mean to suggest that the customer line has suffered any decay or interruption. No, for the lie, as a virtue, a principle, is eternal. The lie is a recreation, a solace, a refuge in time of need. The fourth grace, the 10th muse, man's best and surest friend, is immortal and cannot perish from the earth while this club remains. My complaint simply concerns the decay of the art of lying. No high-minded man, no man of right feeling, can contemplate the lumbering and slovenly lying of the present day without grieving to see a noble art so prostituted. In this veteran presence, I naturally enter upon the theme with diffidence. It is like an old maid trying to teach nursery matters to mothers in Israel. It would not become me to criticise you gentlemen, who are nearly all my elders, and my superiors in this thing. And so if I should here and there seem to do it, I trust it will be in most cases more in spirit of admiration than of fault finding. Indeed, if this finest of the fine arts had everywhere received the attention, encouragement, and conscientious practice and development which this club has devoted to it, I should not need to utter this lament, or shed a single tear. I do not say this to flatter. I say it in a spirit of just and appreciative recognition. It has been my intention at this point to mention names and give illustrative specimens, but indications observable about me admonish me to beware of particulars and confine myself to generalities. No, fact is more firmly established than that lying is a necessity out of circumstance. The deduction is then a virtue that goes without saying. No virtue can reach its highest usefulness without careful and diligent cultivation. Therefore it goes without saying that this one ought to be taught in public schools, at the fireside, even in the newspapers. What chance has the ignorant, uncultivated liar against the educated expert? What chance have I against the lawyer? Judicious lying is what the world needs. I sometimes think it were even better and safer not to lie than to lie injudiciously. An awkward, unscientific lie is often ineffectual as the truth. Now let's see what the philosophers say. Note the venerable proverb, children and fools always speak the truth. Deduction is plain, adults and wise persons never speaking. Parkman, the historian, says, the principle of truth may itself be carried into absurdity. In another place, in the same chapter, he says, the saying is old that truth should not be spoken at all times, and those who a sick conscience worries into habitual violation of this maxim are imbeciles and nuisances. It is strong language, but true. None of us could live with an habitual truth-teller, but thank goodness none of us do. An habitual truth-teller is simply an impossible creature. He does not exist. He has never existed. Of course, there are people who think that they never lie, but it is not so. And this ignorance is one of the very things that shame our so-called civilization. Everybody lies, every day, every hour, awake, asleep, in his dreams, in his joy, in his mourning. If he keeps his tongue still, his hands, his feet, his eyes, his attitude will convey deception, and purposely. Even in sermons, but as a platitude. In a far country, where I once lived, the ladies used to go around paying calls under the humane and kindly patience of wanting to see each other. And when they returned home, they would cry out with a glad voice, saying, we made 16 calls and found 14 of them out. Not meaning they found out anything against the 14, no. That were a colloquial phrase to signify they were not at home. And the manner of saying it expressed their lively satisfaction in that fact. Now their pretence of wanting to see the 14, and the other 2 whom they had been less lucky with, was the commonest and mildest form of lying, which is sufficiently described as deflection from the truth. Is it justifiable? Most certainly. It is beautiful. It is noble, for its object is not to reap profit, but to convey a pleasure that is 16. The iron-souled truthmonger would plainly manifest, or even utter the fact that he didn't want to see these people, and he would be an ass, and inflict a total unnecessary pain. And next, those ladies in that far country, but never mind, they had 1,000 pleasant ways of lying, would grow out of gentle impulses that were a credit to their intelligence and an honour to their arts. Let the particulars go. The men in that far country were liars, every one. Their mere howdy-do were a lie, because they didn't care how you did, except they were undertakers. To the ordinary inquiry, you lied in return, but you made no conscious diagnosis of your case, but answered at random, and usually missed it considerably. You lied to the undertaker and said your health were failing, an wholly commendable lie, since it cost you nothing and it pleased the other man. If a stranger called and interrupted you, you said with your hearty tongue, I'm glad to see you, and said with your heartier soul, I wish you were with the cannibals and it were dinner time. When he went, you said regretfully, must you go, and followed it with, call again. But you did no harm, for you did not deceive anybody nor inflict any hurt, whereas the truth would have made you both unhappy. I think that all this courteous lying is sweet and loving art, and should be cultivated. The highest perfection of politeness is only a beautiful edifice, built from the base of the dome of graceful and gilded forms of charitable and unselfish lying. What I bemoan is the growing prevalence of the brutal truth. Let us do what we can to eradicate it. An injurious truth has no merit over an injurious lie. Neither should ever be uttered. The man who speaks an injurious truth, lest his soul be not saved if he do otherwise, should reflect that the sort of soul is not strictly worth saving. The man who tells a lie to help a poor devil out of trouble is one whom the angels doubtless say, lo, here is an heroic soul who casts his one welfare into jeopardy to succour his neighbours. Let us exalt this magnanimous liar. An injurious lie is an uncommendable thing, and also, and in the same degree, is an injurious truth, a fact which is recognised by the law of libel. Among other common lies, we have the silent lie, the deception which one conveys by simply keeping still and concealing the truth. Many obstinate truthmongers indulge in this dissipation. Imagine if they speak no lie, they do not lie at all. In that far country where I once lived, there were a lovely spirit, a lady whose impulses were always high and pure, and whose character answered to them. One day I were there at dinner and remarked in a general way that we were all liars. She was amazed and said, not all. It was before Pinafore's time, so I did not make the response which would naturally follow in our day, but frankly said, yes, we are all liars, there are no exceptions. She looked almost offended and said, why, do you include me? Certainly, I said. I think you even rank as an expert. She said, shh, the children, so the subject would change in deference to the children's presence, and we went on partaking about other things. But as soon as the young people were out of the way, the lady come warmly back to the matter and said, I have made it the rule of my life never to tell a lie, and I have never departed from it in a single instance. I said, I don't mean the least harm or disrespect, but really you've been lying like a smoke ever since I've been sitting there. It's caused me a good deal of pain, because I'm not used to it. She required of me an instance, just a single instance, so I said, well, here's the unfilled duplicate of the blank which Oakland Hospital people sent to you by the hand of the sick nurse when she came here to nurse your little nephew through his dangerous illness. This blank asks all manner of questions as to the conduct of the sick nurse. Did she ever sleep on her watch? Did she ever forget to wear her medicine, and so forth and so on? You will want to be very careful and explicit in your answers, for the welfare of the service requires that nurses be promptly fined or otherwise punished for derelictions. You told me you were perfectly delighted with that nurse, that she had 1,000 perfections and only one fault. You found you never could depend on her wrapping Johnny up half sufficiently while he waited for a chilly chair for her to rearrange the warm bed. You filled up the duplicates of this paper and sent it back to the hospital by the hand of the nurse. How did you answer this question? Were the nurse at any time guilty of negligence which will likely result in the patient's taking cold? Come, everything is decided by a bet here in California. $10.10 you lied when you answered that question. She said, I didn't, I left it blank. Just so, you have told a silent lie. You have left it be inferred that you had no fault to find in the matter. She said, oh, was that a lie? And how could I mention her one single fault that she always suffered? It would have been cruel. I said, I know always to lie, when one can do good by it. But your impulse were right, but your judgment were crude. This comes of unintelligent practice. Now observe the result of this inexpert dedication of yours. You know Mrs. Jones's Willie is lying very low with scarlet fever? Well, your recommendation was so enthusiastic that the girl is there nursing him, and the worn-out family have all been trusting sound asleep for the last 14 hours, leaving their darling with full confidence in those fatal hands, because you, like Lum George Washington, have a reputation. However, if you are not going to have anything to do, I will come round tomorrow and we'll attend the funeral together. For of course you'll naturally feel a peculiar interest in Willie's case, as a personal one in fact, the undertaker. That we're all lost. Before I were halfway through, she were a carriage and making 30 miles an hour towards the Jones mansion to save what were left to Willie, and I'd tell all she know about the deadly nurse, all of which were unnecessary as Willie wasn't sick. I'd been lying myself. The same day, all the same, she sent a line to the hospital which filled up the neglected blank and stated the facts too, in the squarest possible manner. Now you see, this lady's fault were not in lying, but only in lying injudiciously. She should have told the truth, there, and made it up to the nurse with a fraudulent compliment further along in the paper. She could have said, in one respect, the sick nurse is perfection. When she is on watch, she never snores. Almost any little pleasant lie would have taken the sting out of that troublesome but necessary expression of the truth. Lying is universal. We all do it. We all must do it. Therefore, the wisest thing is for us to diligently train ourselves to lie thoughtfully and judiciously, to lie with a good object and not an evil one, to lie for others' advantage and not our own, to lie healingly, charitably, humanely, not cruelly, hurtfully, maliciously, to lie gracefully and graciously, not awkwardly and clumsily, to lie firmly, frankly, squarely, with head erect, and not ultimately tortuously as with pusillanimous men, as being ashamed of our high calling. Then shall we be rid of the rank and pestilent truth that is rotting the land. Then shall we be great and good and beautiful and worthy dwellers in a world where even benign nature habitually lies, except when she promises execrable weather. Then, but I am but a new and feeble student in this gracious art, I cannot instruct this club. Joking aside, I think there is much need of wise examination into what sorts of lies are best and wholesomest to be indulged, seeing we must all lie and do lie, and what sorts may be best to avoid. And this is a thing which I feel I can confidently put in the hands of this experienced club, a right body who may be termed in this regard, and without utter flattery, old masters. And that is the end of On the Decay of the Art of Lying by Mark Twain, which I think I might have rushed through a little bit because he said 15 minutes and I thought better get it done, but I do rather like that one. But yeah, I'm a big fan of that one, being that he's a whole-throated and very honest and earnest defence of lying through the form of an argumentative essay, and makes many good points about the virtues and good qualities of lying well applied. A subject that is near and near to my heart as a terrible little rat. I've been reading a fair bit of Twain lately, as you can see by this little collection of books here. And I find he's somewhat hit and miss in that some of his ones, the sort of Barbers and the Journals of Germany and the Jumping Frogs, Calaveras County, all were a bit low. He's got a very good tone to him, and when he's talking about something he cares about and is joyful, he's a very, very enjoyable writer. Well, I think it's just that I'm new. Like, it takes time with people. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, Twain I found is a very fun writer to read, but only when he's upbeat and enjoying something. He can be a little bit empty when he's done. The other one we've been reading recently is Fitzgerald over here. And all of his stories seem to be terribly miserable, but they're all really quite good. Other than, there's one, Basil the Freshest Boy, which are a bit weird. Yeah, it's been interesting. But yeah, I do appreciate you coming by. You can see my little library slowly filling up with books, as it is. And yeah, I do try and get into the reading of it. And I mean, I enjoy it anyway. And I save all of these on a little, I save the VODs on YouTube, so they're never gone. Yeah, I do appreciate having someone come by. Anyway, well, yeah, I think, unless I was to go over, well, no, I don't really have anything short enough to go over in whatever time you've got left. And really, I'd probably, I don't know, I think that's the first time I've reread anything, so we'll see how that plays. But yeah, I do appreciate you coming by, even if it's just for the end. It's always nice to have someone here listening to something, at least live. Yeah. But I don't think I've got much else to say, so unless you've got another thing to say, I suppose I'll bid you adieu. Have a quick drink. Yeah, I thought that was fun. What you got? Well, hang on a second. I've got to do something if I'm going to do this. I've just gone to my browser and realised that I set up to post a little going live announcement as I went live, and then just didn't post it. So that's been sitting open on Twitter for 2 hours. Hang on. Oop. Bam! And now I am the character who is allowed to break character. So yeah, now I am possessed in the universe, possessed by the ghost of the sort of fake spirit of intellect who believes he's a 20-something who's doing the VTuber thing. And yeah, I thought the little bookshelf were quite fun. It means you can have a slightly constantly updating background, which was very devastating because I had my computer completely die about a week into streaming with all of this stuff gone, and I had to struggle to recover it after I lost my hard drive. But it's all been good. And yeah, it's a little something that I add to now and then. Gives me something to do during the day. Lets me practice my remarkably limited art skills. And yeah, all a little project. Oh, what am I doing? We've got a moth here. What am I doing? I haven't introduced you to Lamp yet. This is Lamp. He used to be a person, and then he got murdered, and his soul was put into a cursed lamp. He doesn't like to talk about it. And he's the one who makes me read all these books for complicated reasons that I don't fully understand. Yeah. Well. Anyway. But yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to say, really, but no. The problem with doing things like this, where I'm reading books that have a set duration and length, is my streams last as long as it takes me to read the books, and then however long I can talk about the books afterwards. So I'm now out of stuff to say, really. It's a downside of the format, but it's quite fun. Anyway, whoop. I do appreciate you swinging by anyhow. It's nice to have company. And blah. Yeah, but yeah, I've got nothing more to say, unfortunately. But I do appreciate you coming out, and yeah, I feel like there should be some platitude to reference towards an event that we got planned coming up, but we just don't have anything. I still owe you a I still owe you a collab where I read you a story to go to bed, don't I? I promised you on that Windrose stream. I have to do that sometime. But yeah, it happens. Anyhow. But yeah. Still, just building up. I've got a bit more Twain. I'm probably going to be working through the next couple of days, and a bit more Fitzgerald. I'm also trying to keep to reasonably short streams up until the Londonathon, so I don't strain my voice. Ahead of what I'm hoping will be a chance for me to strain my voice quite badly. We'll find out. But yeah. Thanks again for stopping by. I'll see you around the Bird website if nowhere else. Good talking to you, man. And as I always say, ta-ra. This isn't like a little... Yeah. This isn't... By the way, this screen isn't a hint at you, this is just my end screen. I want to be clear. It just occurred to me now that talking to a single person then switch to this comes across a bit hostile. Anyway, yeah. Bye-bye, ta-ra.